like to call this meeting to order and announce that this meeting of the Seguin Independent School District has been duly called in accordance and has been posted in accordance with the Texas Opens Meeting Act, Section 551.043 of the Texas Government Code. This evening for our pledges, we have Jose Alfredo Martinez Alvarado, who is a fifth grader at Rodriguez. He's going to come up and he will be saying the pledges for us both in English and in Spanish. So what a treat this evening.
Y a la República que representa una nación ante Dios indivisible con libertad y justicia para todos. Honor and Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to these Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Honra a la bandera de Texas. Te prometo lealtad a ti, Texas, un estado ante Dios, único e indivisible.
Thank you so much for coming up. We really appreciate it. That means a lot. All right, moving on, we need to have a moment of silence, so I'll give you all a bit of time for reflection. Okay, I want to greet everybody out there. I was afraid we weren't going to have many people here because there's a lot of things going on this evening here at schools. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gutierrez for his announcements now.
Good evening, Matador Nation. Since our last board meeting on November the 15th, here are a few highlights. First, I want to start by acknowledging our new trustee, Mr. Josh Bright, who is in his new official capacity as a Seguin ISD board member. So let's welcome Mr. Bright. Our Seguin High School staff hosted a kickoff event for the new Pathways and Technology program that will be offered to our Seguin High School students beginning next fall. Thanks to partnerships with area businesses, the program will allow students to become certified in the pharmacy tech field. Students who finish the 4-year program will graduate with a Seguin High School diploma and an associate degree from Northwest Vista College, plus a pharmacy tech certification. The Seguin Education Foundation's annual Surprise Patrol took place on November 17th when SEF members and the Matador Band visited campuses to award more than $60,000 in innovative learning grants to very happy Seguin ISD educators. Congratulations to all of our teachers who applied and won a great and big thank you, to the SEF for their outstanding support of our students and staff. On Thursday night, I had the pleasure of attending the Tradiciones Navideñas multilingual event that featured elementary students in the dual language program and secondary students in mariachi and ballet folklorico, as well as ball early childhood students. On hand to see these talented students were many parents and family members who filled the entire Seguin High School cafeteria. We had outgrown this facility, and we've outgrown the Seguin High School cafeteria. Next year, we'll have to host the event in the Performing Arts Center in order to accommodate all of our guests. Speaking of talented students, over the past 3 weeks, there have been numerous holiday performances from students in all grade levels who are involved in choir, band, dance, mariachi, and other programs. If you've not If you're not yet in holiday spirit, you still have time to see a few this week, including the Barnes Theater Christmas show tomorrow, the Seguin High School Dance Winter Showcase on Thursday, and the Barnes Mariachi Concert on Friday. The Seguin Sports Booster hosted the Meet the Mats community event on November the 7th. I enjoyed seeing all of our winter sports athletes and coaches introduce themselves to all of those in attendance. In closing, I wish our Seguin ISD family and Seguin community a blessed and happy holiday season. Thank you all, and remember, it's always a great day to be a Matador.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gutierrez. Now each of the board members will give a highlight for something that they did over the course of the last month. I'll start off. I went to see the Seguin High School choir performance last Friday. I was blown away. I have to admit I thought I was gonna sneak out early, because I had to go pick up groceries. But it was so impressive that I stayed the entire time, and there were a series of small groups. But then, is it Dr. Parrish or Mr. Parrish? Dr. Parrish. He came up and told us that he was going to have both middle school and high school students performing. It was a 40-minute straight performance, no breaks. He didn't want anybody clapping. And they were singing in both Latin and English. I don't remember the name of the piece, but even sitting here talking about it, I have chills thinking about how phenomenal it was. So we have so much to be proud of here in Seguin with our Fine Arts Department. All right, Mr. Bright, putting you on the spot.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, I had a lot to talk about actually, but I really want to talk about the one thing that came from right before coming to this meeting, and that's the AJB PBL Symposium. I had to do a quick turn in there because of the meeting tonight, and it started at 5:30, but it was really kind of exciting to see what the things that they're working on in there and what they're trying to portray with the students. The cafeteria was full of masks that they were doing for face your face, and some real, some of the papers were kind of interesting. Obviously being middle school kids and trying to find their way in the world, and some of them took it pretty serious and were, put a lot of thought and effort into it. And there was definitely some really cool masks that were in there, and what the students were saying about that project was very interesting as well too. And then I made it to the 6th grade pod. I didn't make it to the other pods just because of the time thing. But I saw that they were doing a cyberbullying thing, and there's some real work being done by these students in those PBLs, from writing scripts and acting it out and filming it and editing the filming and putting that whole thing together. There's some pretty serious work going on there, so it's interesting and exciting, and to see what's going on over there with those.
It's hard to pick one. Two of the highlights for me went to the Winter Wonderland at Jefferson, and that was really nice. There was a performance by their drum, I forget their name, but the Jefferson Drum Corps they have these drums. And what's interesting about that is that that was actually a Seguin Education Foundation grant back in the day. And it's so nice to see that those, yes, are still being utilized. And Mr. Robinson at Jefferson, the music teacher, is phenomenal. He's like the Pied Piper of children. So if you ever get a chance to go see him in action, please do. So that was a highlight. And then students got to walk through. It's like they went on a little adventure all over their school, and there were hands-on activities for them to do, and it was very special. But I would be remiss if I don't say what another opportunity was to see the Matador men's basketball team. Y'all need to get to a game because it's about to get exciting. It was very exciting to watch, so I encourage you to do that.
Mr. Amador.
Of the various events that I went to the graduation at the Mercer Brumber Learning Center at Xavier. I was told what this graduates went through to graduate. I really appreciated their efforts to attend school and complete their courses. Since they struggled to attend school to graduate, I feel they will succeed in whatever career they choose. And I think we need to give them a little bit more, what's the word? Encouragement. There you go.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Jenkins.
new board member orientation. It's, I missed one because I was on vacation, but I would like to say that we should all attend new board member orientation when we have to have one. Because there's so much that you pick up on that you know on a daily basis, but it's always a good refresher.
Yeah, we think we know it all, and you sit through those and you think.
But I was on vacation this last week, and I've been spending quite a bit of time in College Station. It's my son's senior year there, so we've been really hanging out with him and having a good time. So,
Great, thank you. Ms. Crittenden.
I have the same highlight as Cindy, but I'll focus on a different part. It was called Mass of the Children.
Thank you.
But seeing the choir, they have worked basically since the beginning of the year on this piece, and seeing them sing with professional musicians, and then their voice coaches were also singing with them, and just the entire thing was so amazing that that's the level that our kids can get to and should expect to be at. It's amazing, and
Do you know how many students were on stage?
I don't know, was the entire high school choir plus part of the AJE choir?
I thought it was well over 150. It's just, it was very impressive.
I know there's 28 seniors in choir, that's all I know. That's the only stat I know. But just impressive. I just sat there and thought, if I closed my eyes, I would not know I was in a high school.
Exactly.
Definitely think I was at a concert that I had paid a lot of money to go see. So.
Thank you. Mr. D, yeah?
I just have to chime in real quick on, and give Dr. Parrott just a lot of credit for putting that amazing show together. And I too closed my eyes a couple of times and thought, this is how it's going to sound when I'm going to heaven. I mean, it was
I think they recorded it, didn't they? They're giving each of the students. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Guerra.
I also attended the Tradiciones Navideñas, and like Gavin was alluding to, it was a big crowd, so I'll be looking forward to it for next year at the PAC Center, and also the Winter Wonderland, and I believe Linda already mentioned some activities that happened there. And today during lunch, I attended a webinar, a MASBA webinar, which was preparing for the 88th legislative session. And of course, a lot of bills are introduced and only a few make it, but two of interest that interested me was the possibly changing the student funding to total enrollment instead of daily allowance, average daily allowance. And another one is to increase the allotment per student attached with a mechanism to adjust for inflation. Both will pass.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Okay, moving on in our agenda, we're up with item 2A, which is our campus highlight, where we typically look at a campus and look at some of the really great work that's going on. So I'm going to turn it over to Alejandro at this point to introduce the campus.
This evening, we're Matador proud to learn about activities and initiatives in our schools. Let's welcome Rodriguez Elementary School Principal Yolanda Grijalva, who is here to tell us about the Parenting Partners program at her school.
Good evening, the school board, President Cindy Thomas Jimenez, Dr. Gutierrez, and other members of the school board. So this evening, we are going to highlight the Parenting Partners program at Rodriguez Elementary that we just started this fall. Alright, so what is Parenting Partners? So these workshops are combined for parenting and leadership skills that empower parents to become a real asset to their child's academic success. And this workshop produces strong family and school partnership that builds parent leadership capacity. So there were 6 different sessions that were presented by people who went to the training. We are going to host it multiple times a year. It was in multiple languages, and it's going to create a sustainable source for parent leadership. So so when Ms. Cynthia Gordon contacted all principals about the parenting partners workshops, the first step we had to take was to create a team. And so we have to be very strategic when we select these teams because you are going to engage in deep, meaningful conversations. And so you want to select teammates that are going to create that space for our parents. And so that's where we selected Ms. Garcia, Ms. Perez Vasquez, and Ms. Trudeau. After we had selected our team, we attended a training, which was very interesting because we actually went through the training ourselves. It was a 2-day workshop which encompassed all 6 sessions, and it was very interesting for us to kind of get out of our role as of trainers and really shift into the mindset of parents, because this was what our parents were going to go through as they engaged in these sessions. And so once we finished with the training, we were really excited about the Parenting Partners program, and we were engaged in then the planning, which we selected dates, times, locations, plan for snacks, materials, roles, and then there was, of course, recruitment of parents, and Ms. Perez Vasquez will speak to that in a moment. And then we began our workshops, and so then this group of ladies were the ones who started leading the workshops with our parents.
So as part of our recruitment, it was very, very important for us to select and prepare our first cohort. And it started with us communicating our goal to our target population. Ms. Ijalva created this team, so we did everything as a team, and more important, to evoke that trust and open communication with our parents. The invitation was probably the most important part of this process, as we wanted to make sure that it was very personable. We all gathered and we made a lot of phone calls. I myself went through the car line as our parents parked there very early before picking up their children, and we went and knocked on their windows and told them about the program, our goal, and just to invite them personally. And then as the sessions began, we presented these engaging lessons, and we promoted a safe and positive environment for all of our parents, as a lot of experiences were shared, very vulnerable space for them. We as parents shared with them as they shared with us.
So you might be wondering, what did we do in these workshop sessions? Because our parents had the same question when they first came in. So we had 6 different workshop sessions. The first one was just focused on parent engagement. What is it? What does it look like? And its impact on student success based on the research. And we started this way so that it would set the purpose moving forward. Our second session was one of our memorable ones. It was on building confident kids. So we had conversations about how our environment and even us as parents impact our kids, and we can sometimes affect their self-esteem and the environment around them, social media, that has a big toll on our students. So we talked about how to build confident students. Our third workshop was on communication. We as parents think we're giving clear communication at all times, and we all learned we do not. So we talked about being clear and specific for our students. Our fourth workshop was on arguments and boundaries. This was also another memorable one. We talked about different strategies in order to avoid the power struggles with our students, which we know as they grow up, they become more intense. So we talked about strategies and setting boundaries with them. Our fifth workshop was on consequences, and just talking about the nature of logical consequences, but also natural consequences that our kids are going to have to deal with as they get older. And then our last session was parenting styles and roles. So this was one of my personal favorite ones because we got to talk about what our parents, how they raised us, and then how we are raising our kids. And then we got to reflect on, do we want to continue that way? Do we want to make changes? And really talking about our roles in the home. And then just making sure we know where we want to go so that our kids can be successful. All right, so here are some of our testimonies. Our first one is Amy Long. She has 3 students who go to Rodriguez, I believe like kinder, a 2nd, and a 5th grade. And she said these sessions were about connecting with parents to talk about different struggles. It was nice to hear what has worked for others and that we're all in the same boat. Like they said, this was very vulnerable for them. They shared stories, we shared stories, so it was a great experience for them.
Virginia Amador, and her testimony was, I feel like at the end of this, we have become better parents. These sessions gave me the tools to communicate better with my child.
On the top left, we have Joseph Garcia. He said, we gained more tools that helped us at home. I was hesitant at first, but I did what I learned, and it has helped my family. It's worth a try. Every little thing helps. And really quick about him, his son would actually see him in the workshop as he was going to specials. So I think it was important for his son to see that he was also learning as well, and he really enjoyed it.
Then we had Vanessa Gomez. I didn't know what I was getting into being a single parent. I have always tried to be involved with my children, which is hard. I know they're growing and changing and I need to adapt. Coming to this helped me gain a better perspective on how to handle different situations, and I've also been able to apply what I learned at my job as well. I would definitely recommend this workshop to other parents as well because, as they say, it takes a village. And then we had Ms. Cindy Aguirre, and I'll let her, you can read it or speak to it, it's up to you.
Well, I'll just read it and then kind of chime in a little bit. It says, already thinking and hoping that I am a good parent and advocate, this helped me realize that I need to slow down, pay attention during the everyday hustle. Having a full-time job made me realize that even the most involved parents can take some reading efforts, I need glasses, to make sure that their child remains a priority. Everyone learns something. And I just want to take a moment and say, well, just kind of like they told me if I could speak today, that's kind of how it was for this parenting program. They called me and said, what do my daughter do now? But anyway, but that is kind of funny. We laugh about it now, but in talking with the other parents, they also had that, why did they pick me? Why did they call me? So it was one of those initial things that we're like, okay, this is new. But at the end of it all, we just talked about it, and we all agreed that it was the best thing for them to have chosen us and for us to kind of have participated in this program. I do want to say, though, before I leave, these guys right here were the best pick to lead this effort at Rodriguez. If anything, I think they could really be that team to help other schools implement this program. The reason I say it is because they talk about, they took that teacher hat off and were parents. We don't get many opportunities to speak with one another. And we all realize, hey, after the school bell rings, we all kind of deal with the same things. And we all come from that in different ways. And I like the last part where we talk about how we parent and kind of do it with the way our parents do. There are different influences that have happened over those years of why maybe my mom did a certain thing and how I can change that up. It wasn't maybe necessarily that my mom wasn't there or my dad wasn't there or my grandpa wasn't there, whatever the case may be. It was, they had to work. Things are different. Priorities are different at times. But I do want to say, I want to thank these guys because they did an excellent, excellent job in leading this charge. I know when they walked out, because they did this whole ceremonial thing, graduation thing, which shocked us and surprised us. When they walked into the classroom, it was great to see the parents that were there talk about this group. They were vulnerable. They told us the challenges that they had. And that's very, very important because it didn't become a teacher kind of, teaching us. We all taught each other. And so that was the most important thing. So I want to thank them because they were excellent, excellent. And I hope they stick together.
So like she said, we kind of went all out on our graduation, but I thought it was very important. We thought as a team, this is huge for them. They've been putting in the work. They came into the workshop sessions. So we wanted this to be meaningful. We wanted to celebrate their accomplishments. We had their kids go, their families were able to join them as well. And our goal is always to collaborate and engage with parents, students, and school staff. And this was just the perfect opportunity to celebrate them all. Thank you. And to end, we are looking ahead to the spring semester. We're starting to plan our logistics for our second cohort. We want to offer more flexible meeting times and even childcare to increase our parent involvement. We want to grow within, so we want to invite our first cohort members to re-guide the spring session and increase our parent engagement. And lastly, it is so important for us to connect with all of our parents, so offering English and Spanish sessions is very important. Thank you.
Well, thank y'all. You know, I'm so happy to see this. It fits so well with our strategic plan, things that, you know, we're trying to get more parent engagement. And I have to say, I think 5 or 6 years ago, Mr. Jenkins and I were sitting in a session at one of the conferences, and we heard about something very similar to this, and we were all charged up about, well, we're going to do this in Seguin. Well, thank you for doing this in Seguin. I think it's phenomenal, and it sounds like the first cohort had such a good experience that you probably won't have to knock on those windows anymore. People will probably come knocking, wanting to join.
I just want to express my appreciation for the staff who really went above and beyond in identifying parents and getting parents there, and for the parents too for taking that risk and their willingness to be able to also make themselves vulnerable, and Rodriguez really can serve as a model. And I interestingly, I had a conversation with a group of superintendents yesterday about what can we do to bring in parents and to be able to showcase what we're doing here. Really makes me proud, but it takes the right people, and I appreciate what you have done to engage your parents, to bring them in, and it's mutual, that growth. Our parents have grown, but you all have grown too, and have just done amazing, and I'm so thankful that Rodriguez chose to showcase what you're doing with the parenting partners.
Yeah, it's a good program. Thanks once again for all y'all. And to me, this seems to be, you mentioned the conference earlier, that if you guys could somehow go to either a CASD or MASRA conference and present this.
Yeah, we want to show y'all. Most definitely. Good point. Any other comments from the board? Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing this. This is really exciting. All right, next up on the agenda is item 2B, which is where we celebrate student, staff, board, and community through recognizing them. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gutierrez and Mr. Hoffman.
Good evening. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce and welcome a new community member to Seguin, Texas, someone who has come in and really hit the ground running, and so it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our new police chief, Chief Jason Brady. And I've been so proud of the partnership that we have been able to strengthen with the city, and particularly our law enforcement agencies, the Seguin Police Department and the County Sheriff's Office. And I have full faith and confidence that that partnership is going to continue to grow and be even stronger. And I think we all realize the importance of that relationship between law enforcement and the schools in light of just the tragic events that are happening across our nation, and most recently down the street from us in Uvalde. And so it's imperative that we maintain those open lines of communication, that we are transparent with one another, that we call on one another when we need assistance. And the police department has absolutely never hesitated to work with us. They are there when we call. They are there when we don't call. And sometimes we are just amazed with what the city does, the police department does for us. And so we are glad to welcome our new police chief, and we do have a gift bag for our new police chief, and we would like to take a moment for the board to be able to meet you and of course take a photo with you.
just want to thank you for the reception. With all those applause, I felt I better go up and say a couple words. I won't be real long. I see the size of your agenda and busy work here. But it's exciting for me to come up and see. I've been to city council meetings my entire career. I gotta admit, I've never been to a school board meeting. So to see the way you guys celebrate the achievements of the students, and the teachers, and the parents, it's really cool. So some great work's going on here. I know you had great relationships with Chief Nichols before me. That level of support and security that we provide is not going to lessen, it's going to increase. And I hope to have meetings with Dr. Gutierrez in the future to see how we can strengthen those and ensure that we're keeping these campuses and our kids and our staff and everyone as safe as we can. And so my administration, my department will be working closely as we always have. I know many of my officers work in these campuses and they have students in these campuses. So, it's really a family. So I appreciate the warm welcome. I'll let you get back to your agenda. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good evening, Board President Thomas Jimenez, Dr. Gutierrez, and trustees. As you know, each month we have the privilege of recognizing superintendent students of the month, and these are students designated from their campus principals and staff members, and we're very proud to have 3 of them here today this evening. Turn around a little bit. First, we have Jose Alfredo Martinez Alvarado. Jose, come on up. Jose is a 5th grade student at Rodriguez Elementary School, and his principal, Ms. Grijalva, notes that he is respectful to his fellow students, teachers, and staff. He works hard to do his best in class every day, is diligent with his studies, and comes to class prepared. Jose is a member of Rodriguez Choir, Student Council, and the Morning Announcements crew. And Jose's mom is Marlene Alvarado. Congratulations, Jose.
And congratulations, Jose. You did a good job.
Our next honoree is Roger Gill, a 6th grade student at AJB. Roger is a hardworking, kind, and respectful young man and truly exhibits the qualities of the ideal AJB student. He is always willing to help his peers and is a friend to many. The admin team at AJB appreciates the positive attitude that Roger brings to school each day. And Roger's mother is Yesenia Rosabelle Cruz III. Congratulations, Roger.
Congratulations, Roger, and congratulations to your family.
Next up, we have Zephania Perez from Mercer Bloomberg Learning Center. Zephania graduated from MBLC on December 2nd. As a student there, she was focused and always went out of her way to exhibit kindness to other students, especially those who are new to campus life at Mercer Bloomberg. Her goal is to become a registered nurse. Principal Jay Law and his staff already miss seeing Zephania's smiling face every day at school. Her parents are Angelica Perez and Stephen Martinez. Way to go, Zephania. And her name is Zephaniah. Everybody takes a half a step to your left.
Congratulations, Zephaniah, to you and your family. Congratulations on graduating.
Our December Apple Award winner is a true servant leader who truly believes that each of our students can achieve great things. This educator celebrates the big and small successes of all of our students. She is not only a leader among her peers, but she is also their biggest cheerleader. She believes in collaboration and believes that it is essential to the success of our students and our campus. I have also had the honor and privilege of visiting her classroom and seeing how amazing she works with kids, implements CHAMPS, implements the new Eureka math, high quality instructional material, and just truly does magic in that classroom. She has been with us for 4 years where she has taught at Weinert. Recently, her class won the Weinert Spirit Stick for increasing their iStation scores by 10%. Please join me in congratulating Weinert Elementary School 4th grade teacher, Lauren Prater.
Congratulations, Laura. We all want to come and visit your class now, so we're going to make some time. So much to celebrate tonight. That's amazing. Next up on our agenda is our audience with the board section of the meeting. We did not have anyone sign up this evening, so we're going to go right into section 4. We have our reports and information items. So we're going to start off with our GT update. I think Ms. Jaramillo and a few others are going to be coming up to the podium.
The whole team, yeah. Good evening, Ms. Thomas Jimenez, board president, Dr. Gutierrez, and the school board. Yes, do not do all of this alone, so I am now passing it over to our fantastic GT teachers. This year, we have, we have a lead GT teacher who really focuses in on the PLCs, pulls the team together, Ms. Sarah. And I don't know if she's starting, but
I will start.
Yes.
Hello, I am still at McQueenie, and I am the only one with one school, 2 jobs, but everybody else has 2 schools, 1 job. I'm at McQueenie. We have Mitzi Wolfel, who is at Rodriguez and Weiner Elementary. We have Katie Henniger, who is this year at Vogel Elementary and also Kennedy Elementary, and we are happy to have Mr. J.T. Martin over here back at Potlawn and Jefferson. So he was gone, he visited, he missed us too much, came back, and so now he's back on the team and we're happy to have him. We have some boring numbers, but we splashed in some really fun, exciting pictures to make it more exciting. And I love these pictures. I had to only put a few, otherwise we'd have a long slideshow of fun pictures, but you can see the engagement and the excitement on kids' faces. And I was happy to see some kids from the other schools also really buying into what they're learning about and excited about learning.
Some key considerations, the state law does require districts to identify and serve GT students per the state plan, and now House Bill 3 requires districts to certify compliance with the state plan and report services and use of funds. The state goal for the gifted and talented initiatives, students who participate in services designed for gifted and talented students will demonstrate skills in self-directed learning, thinking, research, and communication as evidenced by the development of innovative products and performances that reflect individuality and creativity and are advanced in relation to students of similar age, experience, or environment.
I was sick recently, so I can't project like him. Our service model for the elementary program is a pull-out model, meaning we see these students 2 to 3 times a week for 45 minutes at a time during their intervention block. They get to come to our class and work directly with us and work with other GT kids in their grade level. So it's a great time to get to be together and really get together. It's an awesome time. We always have a good time. In middle school, they have the GT science program, where they stay together in a science program as they go up. And then in high school, it's the advanced academics, the AP, and dual credit program. Learning opportunities, we provide students with opportunities for inquiry across multiple content areas. Tasks are aligned with the TEKS for ELAR, math, science, and social studies. We provide opportunities to create quality work as described by the Texas State Plan for the Education of Gifted and Talented Students. We as the GT teachers, we like to collaborate and create our own unique units of study sometimes. Like in 4th grade, we are doing ancient civilizations, and that's been probably my favorite one that we're doing. It's amazing. They're in it. It's great. The tasks allow us to best meet students' interests, abilities, and backgrounds, and we use real-world STEM curriculum from a program called Jason Learning. It's great.
Did I miss something? Oh, no, you're good.
We support classroom teachers in differentiating the instruction to meet the needs of students. Some ideas we give them are uptime folders, menus, and project-based learning. We also HMH and STEM scopes that everybody has access to have great PBLs, enrichment, and extension activities that the teachers can use in their classroom. And the rigor and relevance planning rubric and 50 units of study support Tier 1 instruction in the classroom.
Just want to thank the rigor and relevance rubric is what we developed last year. That was part of one of our goals, was to work with the rigor and relevance training and to build something. And we built like a one-page sheet to help teachers plan a one rigorous lesson, and that's what's in it.
In previous numbers, from back in 2017 until now, you can see during COVID, we kind of dipped down in our enrollment, but now we're up and running back. We have 7.68% in the district that are identified as gifted and talented, and we have kindergarten testing coming up in January. We have lots of students that we're going to be testing, and then in the spring we have first through fifth that we'll also do. So maybe our numbers will grow. We're hoping. And you over there. That's it.
Here's a breakdown of right now our elementary campuses, the total enrollment versus the GT population in each school. If you just look at the population of a group of people across the nation, it would be about 5% would be qualified as gifted. We did change some of our qualification standards a few years ago because we had a qualifying score of 98 percentile, and that is extremely high. So that would be very, very, very gifted, and we thought we were leaving out a lot of kids, and the point is to serve a large variety of gifted students and try to build them up. And so we weren't trying to keep people out, and so we now have a 90th percentile qualification score, and that has really opened it up to a lot of different kids getting into the program that need to be in the program because the regular classroom is not able to push them in their areas of strength. And so with that, we might have a little bit higher than 5 in some areas. There is some differences in schools, but we were brainstorming this actually because it seems really high to have 11% in one campus and then have 4% in another campus, and that is alarming. I don't know what the one magical reason is for that. I think there's probably a lot of different reasons. One of them is we are not in the classrooms like GT teachers were 15 years ago whenever they were only at one campus, where they themselves saw and worked with all kids and then were able to pick out gifted traits within that classroom, and the GT teacher was the person who referred kids for testing a lot of the time. But now we rely a lot on teachers to refer people for us to test because we are not working always with the whole population at once. We test who is referred to us. And we found that some of the campuses have a very high turnover rate, and some of the teachers are not familiar with recognizing those traits in their students. And so some kids are being missed because they're not referred to us to test in the first place. So we're trying to find ways to get in the classroom more. We are using our schedules where we have holes in our schedules to push in. Sometimes it's based on campus needs, so we might not be in every grade level. I have a block of time where I'm in a 4th grade class, but I don't have a block of time where I'm pushed into every single grade. So I am relying heavily on that. We do have an overview, and we send out traits to look for in a classroom whenever it's time for a referral. So we say, please read this list. What students come to mind, and that's who we get for. Of course, you can have anybody tested, any parent can have their child tested, but we also dig deeper and ask teachers to look for those traits as well. We have another goal to do more training, because we have done training, but if we have teachers that are not returning year after year, then we have certain schools where there's a higher turnover rate than others, and so some might have more experience with referring students that are then put into the program, and others they don't have the experience yet. So we're working on that. Another thing that might have come up is I have attended a training this summer in trauma-informed schools, and there's also an article in the school board website. I looked at that also. And one of the things that I thought was possibly something to think about was if we do have a high level of trauma students, it has an adverse relationship to their academic progress, and they can sometimes be below grade level and therefore probably wouldn't qualify for some of the gifted talented testing if they have had that in their background a lot. But I don't know exactly, but that's just some ideas. So we're working on that. The population served, this was something that's been on the top of our list and the top of our minds for a few years now, but I do want to highlight some changes. It's really hard and really slow to change percentages, but if we compare 2017 when this became like very apparent and at the top of our focus, we do have some changes in the right direction. For example, we look at the Hispanic population in the district versus the GT enrollment. It does not match yet, but we are closing the gap slowly between what it used to be in 2017. We're going the right way. So that's something to be happy about. It's slow, but it's progress. So we celebrate growth, right? Okay. What's new is we have new people. So new faces, we had 2 new faces. That we had 2 new teachers, and now we have Mr. Martin back, so we're happy about that. And with new teachers, we of course need to meet because they're new, so they don't know what to do yet. So we are collaborators, and we have Google, of course, we're Google Place, but we have had this year's brand new a Google Drive. So if we do have someone that's new, we can just add them to the drive and then they have access to everything rather than have to share every single document one at a time to everybody, because that's been a mess. So we're organizing ourselves digitally, and that's a very big deal. The website that we told you about last year, whenever I came into this role in August, it was still not accessible from the district website, and now it is. So the website that we made and built together last December, I guess you were here in December, is now linked through the Seguin ISD website. We are meeting monthly for PLC time and collaboration. We've been trying to take advantage of the half days that are already built in so that we don't have to be away from our kids and our regular schedules, but when people meet on those half days, we are also meeting so that we can plan ahead for the next quarter. We have some goals. We've talked about this, but I really am passionate, and I wanted to have it again, is that I would like to have the GT 6-hour update somehow embedded in back-to-school PD for everyone. So even if they haven't had their 30 hours, they're still hearing at least 6 hours of GT, and that would be really great. In the past, we have done it as a district with curriculum, and we always have curriculum going on. So one year we did questioning, we did just really deep levels of questioning, and that can always be bring in the GT element and how to differentiate for your kids. So if we could build that into back to school PD, and that way teachers have it, it's there, they get a little taste of GT at least, and I think it would be better for all because it's just good instruction, best practices. So the other goal, which I can't do this by myself, but hopefully I can find the right person to join up with, is to develop a plan for we can do better in the secondary level, I think, because I talked to middle school former students of mine, and it's not good enough. We got to do better. They are sad, they don't have GT anymore. I don't know, but I'm thinking this project-based learning that we have going on, maybe we could have a GT section and get some kids together so they can collaborate with other GT students. I don't know if that's possible, but you're the board, so you can do what you want to, so we'll say. But I don't know if there is a time or a good time of year where you could meet with some of the teachers that are doing gifted education in middle school, but I think that it would be awesome if we could, so that we could help that transition between elementary and what GT looks like and what we could do in middle school and what that would do for our kids, give them a little bit more support when they transition to that scary big middle school.
We're still sad in high school too. About the no GT.
Okay, well then high school too. All the way. K through 12. Some more happy faces. Look, triumphant. GT kids in action and doing great things. These kids did something for Veterans Day. That was cool. And that's it. Any questions? And thank you for your time and Merry Christmas. I'm so excited. We got a couple of fun.
Are there any questions from any of the
I have a
trustees?
quick question,
Okay.
if I can articulate it properly. So are all kids tested in kindergarten
Great question. We have a universal screener. It used to be in kinder, but the screener is on a computer and it's 48 questions. So we found out that a lot of our students were testing as if they were below average, and that wasn't the case. They are just happy clickers. So we had it moved to second grade. So yes, every second grader is screened with one of the measures of our test, which is it gives the ability score, which is like an IQ equivalent score. We moved it to second grade because they're more mature and they can get through the whole test without just clicking. And it also supports kids that are being tested and screened for dyslexia, because they use that as a measure in that test as well. So it's doubly helpful.
But they can come in at any point in elementary?
We test kindergartners, but in kinder, instead of testing every single kindergartner, we now rely on referrals for kinder. So teachers can refer, parents can refer, and whoever's referred, we test.
Is there any way to get in without taking that test, or are there other factors that are taken into consideration, or is it just based on the test?
We have several measures of the test. So there is the abilities test. That's my favorite one, but I respect them all. There's a math test and there's a reading test. And then we do a portfolio just because we like to talk to the kids and kind of hear how they're thinking. And it's not just the drawing test, it's the thinking behind the work. So we do the pieces we do the same thing. Because some districts do turn in the portfolio, but then it kind of depends on the teacher that assigned the assignment that is in the portfolio. So we found that if we do little mini activities in a controlled environment, we can really see the differences in thinking. And so all those are factors, but even beyond that, we talk to classroom teachers. They have a survey to take, and even academic deans and teachers in general, because sometimes we find out that a student is bilingual, they just moved, and they're already picking up English in a month and a half. You know, and stuff like that does matter. Yes, definitely. So they might not score in the 90th percentile at that time, but that would be a student that needs other pieces of evidence, and it would go to the committee, and we would say, wow, this kid needs to be in this program. So we do look at more than the test, but the test is where we start.
Thank you.
Yes, Ashley.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
So you mentioned that all second graders are tested, correct?
Yes.
Do we have any data, not right now, of course, as far as how many actually pass that test, and then factor year by year?
It does depend on the year. I have always had a kid that hasn't been referred do so well that now they're in GT from the screener. So I find that to be worth it, you know, because they weren't maybe referred by a parent who maybe didn't know to refer, or just didn't realize that they needed that, or even a teacher that didn't recognize the traits that they saw in the classroom as giftedness. Some are very quiet, some are very naughty, and you never know. So we have always found extra kids that were not referred by a teacher or a parent through the screener. So
Okay. No, I was just curious to see how many out of all second graders in the district.
that qualified just from that.
Yes, I know than just that test.
Okay, we can find that out. Yes, sir.
Have you ever had the occasion where a student is recommended for the program, but the parents don't want that student to be in the program?
Very rarely, very rarely. Sometimes it's a misconception of what the program is, or they had a prior experience with the program and it wasn't the same.
Yeah.
Some parents said, I don't want my child to be in that because it's extra work. And in elementary school, that's not what it is. So I can't speak to all districts and how they do their programs, but we don't give homework. We're not adding to the students' workload. We only pull during intervention block now, so we are an intervention. And so they're not missing any core lessons, no direct teach time. They're getting us for an intervention rather than another intervention. So that's the only time, and usually if you explain that to parents, like, well, this is how it works in Seguin ISD, and these are the opportunities that your child will have, I haven't had anybody say no. But, I mean, I know it has happened, but it's very rare.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, ladies. Thanks for sticking around this evening.
Thank you all so much for sharing this valuable information. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
All right. Next up, we have item 4B, which is for us to get an update on our fabulous LINK program. So we have Mr. Pete Sylvius will be introducing a guest for us as well from TCU.
Don't hold that against me.
Go Frogs.
All the way to the bowl.
Well, good evening, Madam President, Dr. Gutierrez, board member, it's good to see you. Mr. Bryant, it's nice to meet you. My name's Pete Sylvius, the Director of Whole Child Initiatives. So good to see you tonight. I'm excited tonight. Last time I was reporting to you all, you asked about a link update, and so we've got a link update for you tonight. So I want to also recognize the fabulous Elizabeth Moore, who one of the joys of our job is supporting the LINK project in Seguin ISD. And so we are really excited to have Dr. Debbie Ray with us tonight. She's a professor at TCU, as you can tell by her purple. And so every piece of clothing she owns is purple. So
I had my purple tennis shoes on. I have removed them.
So we're at about 5.5 years of LINK implementation in Seguin ISD. So the timing to give you a little update on where we're at, provide some data, it's a good time to do that. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Ray, and look forward to having some more conversation with you soon. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Pete. All right. So, hello, everyone. Let me go ahead and just dive on in. So, just to give you some background on this, we started the project with y'all 2017, 2018. So, that first fall of 2017 to spring 2018, we were good. 2018 to 2019, we were good. And then, spring of 20, which was that third year, fell apart. Right? So we had some data from the fall, but could not continue it to see what was going on from fall to spring. So we don't have the data from that year to really show much. So you'll see a skip in some of the data that I showed. But then the following year, 2020, 2021, is a very important year because it's the time that we all came back and what happened with that film, right? And then we have this past year, and you won't see data from this year because we're in the middle of it. So really you're seeing 4 years of the 5 years of data. All right. On top of that, a couple of things that have happened during the time we've been here that were very good positives is playground equipment. There was a grant that was given, or the bond, part of the bond, to be able to put some great equipment on the playgrounds, which I think has enhanced it tremendously, which is awesome. And the second thing is that what I realized after starting with LINK back in 2014 with our first schools, as we developed into different schools, urban, rural, suburban, all different mixes, diversity, equity, and just the different things that were going on, we realized that in schools that were less successful, it was because of the trauma, which you heard about earlier from other people, but it's the trauma that doesn't seem to be met at the same level as all the other things that are going on with the play intervention, the character piece, and so forth. And so, right about the time COVID was hitting that year, there's another group on campus at TCU that I became closer with, and that's the Karen Purvis Child Development Institute, which you would know probably Trust-Based Relational Intervention Program, which is TBRI. If you've heard of that, you have it on your campuses now with your counseling groups and with the grant that they receive to be able to bring on other programs. What I started doing is training the teachers on some concepts that they could do in class, as well as coming from the upper admin down through the counselors and down into the schools. They're meeting in the middle with all these things going on, because it's really hard to make changes in a year or two. It's really hard to make changes over even a 10-year period, right? Because there are a lot of changes happening within change. So what's happened with us is we've seen some of these things going on as well, and I think that's part of the picture that you're seeing here. So
We know that overall play promotes brain activity. And one of the things that I talk about a lot, especially when I do trainings, is that when children sit for long periods of time and they don't get that play interaction outdoors, we're seeing Alzheimer's statistics start hitting our younger populations. And we talk about how our younger populations are going to die before their parents. And one of the biggest reasons is the fact that we don't have enough movement, physical activity, and play in children's lives. And so I have to thank y'all very, very much for what you're doing for your children in Seguin, because you're going to see over and over how this is huge for them. And then for pro-social behaviors, which I call empathy, we're seeing a lot of change in that direction. And then executive function, the academic side, you're going to see that tonight too. Yeah.
And Mr. Bright, I was just thinking that I probably should have introduced this a little bit more fully for your benefit. Link in Seguin is 4 unstructured recess breaks coupled with the character education program.
No, I'm familiar with it. We talked about it at orientation.
Okay, great. All right, good.
All right.
Excuse me.
Okay, so there are two pieces that we have been assessing since the 2017-2018 year. One of them is off-task behavior, and the other is attentional fatigue. Off-task behavior is observations in the classroom to show kids who are fidgety, walking around the room when they should be in their seats doing their work, staring out the window or sleeping at their desk or drooling on their papers, and speaking to others instead of doing what they should, so it's distraction to other kids. Before we start in any program, we're usually around 60 to 70% off-task behavior in schools. No different here in this district. But what you see here is that off-task behaviors, when you compare on kinder, first, second, third, and fourth, is you start seeing that these behaviors start decreasing. And in your district, which is District 1 at this point, you'll see that the off-task behaviors are coming down as the time goes on. But this was spring of 2022. In previous years, we were down before COVID, 40% drop to 20%. And what you see is that, if I can show this here, is that we're talking 20% along this line, but your off-task behaviors are much lower, significantly lower than the other district that has 30 minutes of recess. So 30 versus 60 is showing significant change in off-task. This equates, let me just say this, it equates to about 2.5 hours of off-task behavior a day when you have these high levels of off-task behavior versus the lower amounts. You can see here in your own district when we tracked your kids in intervention schools versus control. This is the first cohort, and so this is 2 schools in the intervention and 5 schools in the control. And what's happened to them at that 30-minute where it shuts off, it's not that the schools quit, it's that they were no longer control schools because they rolled into intervention. But you can see that the 60 minutes continue to go lower in off-task behavior. Attentional focus, this has to do with, and I'm sure you're at this point right now, if I were to measure your attentional focus, it's probably as hard to get you to focus as it is for a child after 2 hours of sitting. But what you see here is, it's a computer task, and it's about being able to do a dual task at the same time. How much effort does it take to listen to numbers being called off in your ears and repeat those numbers verbally, while doing a simple task of hitting a key for a right arrow coming up and a key for a left arrow coming up. That task alone should be easy, but the listening effort that it takes to hear the numbers and repeat them back to the person at the place with them creates the effort. We want less effort, not more effort in listening, correct? We want to know that we're attending without a lot of effort. What you see here is significantly, we are dropping at a much more significant pace over time from fall morning and afternoon to spring morning and afternoon. And what we've been able to tell your teachers and principals over the years is that it doesn't matter when you teach content. They're able to listen and create that effort no matter what time of day they're in the classroom because of these multiple breaks throughout the day. That's what creates this. The second thing you see on here is right here, you see a real blip in the comparison schools of your own district. And it's because we know that the afternoon from the morning is really difficult. And what the Link kids, 4 unstructured play breaks a day, are able to do is stay focused and be very consistent across that morning to afternoon. In fact, they're usually better in the afternoon than the morning. Who hears that in schools these days? Usually it's like, oh my gosh, could school finish a little bit earlier because I can't handle these kids anymore? On the other hand, it's helping your teachers too. This isn't in the report, but I just wanted to tell you, it helps your teachers too, because usually by the afternoon, the kids don't have a sense of humor anymore, neither do the teachers. And it's like, okay, you're in trouble now because I can't handle what you think is your sense of humor. But because they're all going outside, teachers and kids, they're all getting the break, they're all getting that re-energizing, and as a result, they're coming back in and they're just as happy in the afternoons as they are in the mornings. The next one, this just has to do with 3rd grade. And this was just this past year, and you can see the 60 minutes is still much stronger than the 30 minutes from morning to afternoon with the 3rd grade sample, just so you can see what we just captured. Moderate vigorous physical activity. We do not require, nor does your district require, that kids be physically active during recess. That's not what it's about. It's about rebooting their brains so that they can learn. We don't care if they're active or not. Now, that's so counterintuitive to me as a physical educator that I don't care that they move because their bodies will require it of them. I don't have to require it. Teachers don't have to require it. The body will require it. And as a result, just a funny story, there will be parents that will tell you that they take their kids to the mall to shop, and within 45 minutes to 60 minutes, the kids are fidgety and say, I got to go outside. So it's not just at school. They become conditioned to what their bodies really do require, which is movement, like it should be on a regular basis. What you see here with 1st and 2nd graders is that our kids are much more active at moderate and vigorous levels than the control school kids, 30 to 60 minutes. With accelerometers, we can also measure steps. And what we're looking at here is, if we look at males and females, this is still showing that males do move more than females. But females are doing more gymnastics moves, while males are tagging. You know, they're going out and tagging each other. But I don't mean tag like, you know, some kind of other ritual thing. I just mean we're playing tag. But, you know, I never know what people, I just want to make sure I'm corrected on this. Y'all did get that one. Okay. But with what we see with females, they're still highly active, which is what you don't usually see in kids as they get older. They're usually becoming less active, especially females. Body fat. This is a huge one, and I'm just going to tell you some things, and you can read this again later. But what we've learned here is this. If older kids are not given equipment to either interact with or be part of, they do become less active. We've learned this. With 4th and 5th graders, they have to have interactive things, or they will become less active. They're not as creative, they're not as problem solving. They just, you know, they need things to do. The younger kids, though, it doesn't matter. They could be in an open field with nothing but flowers, bees, snakes, whatever it is, and they're good. But for the older kids, they need that interactive engagement. Okay? Second thing is that we see, if you see these interactions here, 3rd graders, here's your control group. They are not shifting much off of overweight, obese. Your control kids at 30 minutes. Your intervention kids are down here at 24 and a half. Y'all, that is better than the state, and it's better than the nation in where you are. It doesn't mean that we're all in the healthy way, but our percentages are so much less in this district because of fidelity of doing the 60 minutes every day and the character piece. In 4th grade, you see a real change here. All of a sudden, the control school kids go up, and we're not talking a lot, but this is not a good pattern to start seeing a shift up. But 4th grade is where kids become less active, and control school kids are getting less time being active, and it's starting to show. We haven't seen 5th grade yet. That's coming in the future. Summary, 60 is better than 30 in decreasing body fat percentage in MBPA. 4th grade, it's also better in these things, but the school design is really, really important. Recess location, the PE schedule, activity choices. And then, this is the part I want you to see here. For every 10-minute increase in MBPA, children are 11.9 times more likely to be healthy than obese. Every time you start saying, oh, should we bring it down to 45 minutes? Should we bring it down to 30 minutes? Oh, maybe they don't need that much. We need to put more content in. You're changing your kids' health through overweight and obese. That healthy weight is going to go up in the overweight and obese categories as you see that. Positive emotions. I don't know if you've been on any of the playgrounds, but what you'll hear is screaming, but it's excited, happy screams. You can tell the difference in a happy scream and a very anxious, uptight, I'm mad at you scream. If you've ever been in either one of those environments, you know the difference, right? But you go on these playgrounds and you see very happy, positive emotions. We changed the assessment tool that we are using to see how we're doing with positive action and social emotional growth with the kids as of the fall we came back from COVID. So what we were using previously and what we have now are two different methods. The one we're using now is called CellWeb, and CellWeb is a computerized program that K through 3 use with one set of assessments, and grades 4, 5, and 6 use a second set of assessments, which are more situational. K through 3 is more factual, like emotional regulation. If I looked at your face on a computer screen, are you happy, sad, frustrated, angry? You know, she's contemplating. I know that emotion. But what we might be seeing on a child's face is what they would be labeling. It's just strictly what they think it is. Whereas if we're in this situation, how is that child reacting to that situation? And so it's a difference in how we do that. What you see here, this is just this past year's results. And you'll see fall to spring, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd. All of these grade levels in your schools are now intervention schools. Grades K through 2 are all intervention, meaning we rolled out all 7 schools over the last 5 years in K through 2 in increments, okay? The one, in K2, I don't really see any glaring issues. The only one that self-control, 1st grade is a little higher in spring at 80%, and it dips down in 2nd grade, and I can't answer why that is. I really don't know until we see more data across the way. I mean, this is just a blip on the screen. If you look at grade 3, and I wish I could have put it with the other, but grade 3 now separates. We have 5 schools that are intervention with grade 3 and 2 that are still controlled. Therefore, we've split it into intervention control here so that you can see what happens with intervention versus control along the way. We're still seeing better things except for self-control 3rd, and again, I don't know what the answer to that one is as well. It just seems that there are a couple of glitches in grade levels with certain things, but we'll have to see as we move along what those might be. The other thing is I'm trying to get a hold of the people that do the assessments nationally to see if this is the same kind of thing that's going on across the nation. And then 4th and 5th, there are 3 scales instead of 4. And you'll see here that this is control, 4th grade, intervention, 4th, and then 5th, all of your 5th graders last year were control. There were no intervention last year for your schools. This year we got 5th grade in 2 schools, but not last year. So for that, these are both control things here. But look at 4th here is still higher than the 5th grade on that one. You'll see it's much higher here, and you see it's higher here on all of these. So with the intervention, you're seeing much better results than you are with control schools. The last thing that, well, it's not last, but it's the second to last, but it's probably the most exciting, and it's a landmark study, and something that I want to make sure you understand. When we started back in fall of 21, we were all back, right? We are now assessing something called hair cortisol. Cortisol is the stress marker that we produce when we're in a fight or flight response. Our kids have been deemed stressed and anxious since coming back from COVID. Would you agree? Your kids are not. Why is that? We think it's for 2 reasons. One, the longitudinal effects of 60 minutes of recess every day. It's a routine. They feel happy. They're resilient. They're coming in the same time every day doing the things that they're happiest about. You ask them what they like about their day the most, and they say recess. They may say lunch, but they usually say recess. Why is that? Because it's the time that they can socialize and become normalized into the culture that they belong to across their peers, not just with one class that they're with all day long. They get to socialize with everybody. What you see here, hair cortisol is taking the hair from underneath the top layer, because sun can actually bleach the hair. So this is taking an underneath layer. You only need a little over an inch of hair. But for people who have longer hair, we go ahead and take the strands. We don't just say, oh, well, I'm going to take it and I'll glue this back on your head. We're not doing that. But at the same time, we're not taking the follicle. We're just taking right above that follicle area, clipping that. 1 centimeter of hair equates to 1 month of stress. 2 centimeters is 2 months of stress, and 3 centimeters is 3 months of stress. We were able to collect 3 months of stress average. We can't say, well, this was August to September stress, September to October, and October to November. But we collected this in November, right before Thanksgiving. So we were able to collect the stress of children coming back for the very first semester from COVID. The national average pre-COVID was 6.7 for 9-year-olds and 8.5 for 10-year-olds. We were measuring 9 and 10-year-olds. What you see here is the control schools. You notice their numbers are not close at all. They are mirroring what you hear in the society about how stressed and anxious kids are. These kids had 30 minutes of recess a day. 15 in the morning, 15 in the afternoon. But these kids had 60 minutes. And you'll notice that the males were at 6.95 and the females were at 4.43. These kids were not stressed. They were comfortable, they were relaxed, they were back. Y'all, this is right after we came back from COVID. This is a huge landmark study that's showing that when you have 60 minutes of recess a day, you're starting to see that your kids level out. And it doesn't matter what's going on out there in the noise, they're fine in their school existence. It's a happy place for them. Now, teachers may be stressed, and I can understand. There's a lot of pressure when you have a standardized test that's coming back and kids haven't even been in school and sometimes not present on computers or anything else over that time. That creates a lot of stress. It's nice to know that what's going on here is positive. And then this shows 9-year-olds 6.37, 10-year-olds 3.67, and I want you to notice here, 10-year-olds are usually higher than 9-year-olds. 10-year-olds here are less stressed than 9-year-olds. It's an amazing thing that's going on. And last but not least, academics. I'm proud to say that coming back from COVID, you know, everybody has been very upset about having to do standardized tests. I would be the first to tell you I think it's the most idiotic thing that we've had to do. Why? Number one, what are we really trying to show you, right? I mean, we're trying to identify that some kids have not been checked in during the time and others have, or what, I don't know. But it is a fact. But y'all have improved exponentially since coming back from COVID, which I think also is a longitudinal effect. The fact that you've been doing this for some years, this does not separate by intervention control. It just shows the overall areas here. But probably the one I want to show you the most is, this is your 3rd grade group to 4th grade, 3rd grade to 4th grade, 4th grade to 5th grade, and 4th grade to 5th grade. They're growing year to year as they're coming back as well. That's all I gotta say. Any questions for me? Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing the data. That was really refreshing. I've been a proponent of this since we started. And, you know, when we first started, there were some eye rolls amongst some people. And this is just proof that it is working. But how are we getting this down the pipe to the people who are actually working, as far as the teachers and things, to show them that it is working, so that they're being challenged?
Yeah, you know, it's a hard sell still, honestly. The way that I am trying to approach this now is that we're trying to create a less stressful work environment for the teachers, not a more stressful work environment. And so what we're trying to do is to help them see that when we do the transitions the way that we show them how to do the transition, it can actually alleviate stress and alleviate, we know transitions are hard. We know just moving our family from one place to the next to a restaurant is hard. So moving 20 kids from one place to the next can be a challenge. One of what I think is the most significant impacts of the LINK project is this idea of empowering students to do the right thing. And 99% of those kids are going to do the right thing. And that allows the teachers to intervene and interact with those 1% that are not. But that's a hard thing for teachers to do. Teachers are not used to releasing that. And so that's one of those things that we have to model, we have to continue to show. And the other thing is we've had a fairly significant amount of teacher turnover, which means that we're training on the fly. And that has been a challenge for us with LINK, because not only are you teaching kind of technical side of this is how we're going to do transitions tighter, but we're also trying to speak to that emotional side of that this might be different than the way that you've grown up interacting with school. This might be different than the way you interact with unstructured time in your own life. So we have to build this appreciation for the cause and build the technical side. So that's an ongoing thing. And you know, Elizabeth spends a ton of time doing that, providing that support at the campus level. We are interacting with principals on a regular basis to try to address that. But it's definitely, as we transition from this research project with TCU to this is how we do school in Seguin, it's going to be something that we have to continually work on. I mean, we're doing a paradigm shift in how school works. You know, so even though we're 5 years in, we're a long way from this being complete. I hope I answered that a little bit.
Very exciting. Very exciting. Great data. Thanks.
It really is. So I'm wondering, you know, as you a PhD at a university, you have to do research and publish. Are we going to be a case study, or you know?
No, you've already been in publications.
Okay.
You've probably been in 5 publications now, and I don't mind at all. I mean, I know that we've got the publications on our website.
Okay.
And we can send any publication. Here's the thing, we don't say which district is which on anything we do, nor do we say which districts are even part of it, only because we want to make sure that we keep that all
Do you receive any feedback about the data?
Here's the feedback we get is, we get national and international exposure on a daily basis from people saying we want what is being done in these districts. the problem is that it takes a superintendent, school board, and community who really see the need to make this shift. And when you don't have that across those three entities, it doesn't happen. Because, you've got to decide that dollars have to go towards this. And it can't just be towards the content side. And y'all have made that, I don't know if you want to call it a sacrifice, but it has paid off, right? To be able to have that return on investment.
You made the commitment.
You have. You've made a huge commitment, and it has paid off royally. But other school districts want it. They try to do it without going through the training of transitions and all the things that go with it. But they don't stick with it because it just flies away when somebody changes in the leadership.
Well, I know Pete and I talked about this for years before it came here, and so we were very fortunate when Dr. Gutierrez came that he was a little familiar with it already. So I think we're really seeing some fabulous data here.
Y'all should be very proud. I mean, this has really worked with fidelity.
And out of the mouths of babes, I work at the Outdoor Learning Center a lot with kids, and I was out there last week with some second graders, and they were in the classroom for 45 minutes, and they were getting really antsy. And the little boy said, I really need to go outside. And so I said to the teacher, is this their link time? She said, oh, yes.
They know their link time, but you've got to have just all of you spoke about the board, the superintendent, the community. The other factor is the teachers, and we spend a lot of time with teachers that first year, a lot of intensive training that continues, but also the leadership on the campus makes a difference too. And we've seen how sometimes that has caused some challenges, and we've been able to address those, getting the right leader in place. But it really takes everyone coming together and truly trusting the process. And now finally we have solid data, and think about just the progress. It's a variety of factors, but this is a factor. When you think about the number of our elementary schools, almost all of them made significant progress academically, and this is one of the factors that has certainly helped us increase the level of engagement, decrease discipline issues, and overall mental well-being. And so we have some elementary principals in here, and so I do want to also thank them for everything that they do or that they have done over the last 5.5 years. And of course, our team here, Coach Moore and Mr. Silvius, and it just takes everyone just being all in. I don't want to say it's buy-in, because it's not. It's about just truly trusting each other and trusting this initiative.
And I do want to point out that I've heard from middle school parents, teachers, and administrators, y'all are back there, that the 6th graders really miss their recess time. It's a big transition for them.
And that's a really important discussion piece, because as this will be the first cohort of 5th graders that have not known anything other than 4 recesses through their school experience. This is what school is. As they transition into 6th grade, it's going to be real important. Now, I don't think that it will look like what we're doing now, but I do think that we need to acknowledge that time outdoors, time in unstructured space is going to be important for their growth. I also just want to highlight that I think what is so fascinating about what we're doing is that this is working in collaboration with so many other initiatives to tighten up how we do school in Seguin. And so this celebration of this data is really a collective celebration of rock-solid teaching, quality instructional materials, and to Dr. Gutierrez's point, the team that's behind me, all of those efforts, and all of us have things that we're super passionate about, and being able to integrate all of these things together for that holistic experience of what it is to be a student in Seguin, that is the long game. That's how we change generations. That's how we make Seguin, that as we have heard a few times tonight, a community that has exceptionally high levels of trauma. That's how we start to change that. This is our tier 1 intervention of that. So, thanks very much.
Any other comments from the board?
Yes,
I just have one real quick. You had mentioned You had mentioned fourth and fifth graders kind of downslope because maybe they get a little bored after being on the equipment for 4, 5, 6 years now. Do you have any suggestions on how we can affect that change?
Yeah, so y'all's group is actually doing better than other groups because you do have the equipment for them to engage with. So they're great in that category. It's the groups that don't, that they say, well, we're just gonna put them in a parking lot and let them play. They do, but they're doing jump ropes or whack-a-mole or something that's just more stationary and just doing a jump occasionally. Versus if they have equipment, they're climbing, they're swinging, they're jumping, and they're getting a lot more interaction with movement than the kids that just have a parking lot or just a few things out there that they can, beat the drum on or whatever. So y'all's kids have that equipment that they're able to go to. The only thing I would say is, and this is something we tell the principal if we pass this on, is just make sure that the rotation for the older kids is much more with the equipment than it is out in the field by themselves, unless there's stuff to do out there, loose equipment, loose parts and things like that.
And Mr. Guerra?
That was great data set, thank you.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, once they make the transition to sixth grade, they're gonna have something missing, and I'm wondering if there's gonna be an increase in sports or extracurricular activities, because their own body can be calling them to do something.
Well, there'll be a lot of kids that won't go into sport, right? It's just not for them. So it's gonna have to be a dialogue that we have about how we move forward. Y'all are bringing it to the forefront, and it's something that we've talked about as far as, what will we do as we move into that sixth grade level. Yeah. And this is the time for us to have another conversation to see what that'll look like.
Next year will be very telling.
Yeah. I think fortunately too, in sixth grade is when they get to take their outdoor trip, right, to HEB?
Now it is, yes.
Now it is, so that's something, to me, it's like, okay, what about 7th, 8th grade, high school? And as a former recreation major, I'm ecstatic about the data because it really proves, the things that we studied in the textbooks are true. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, thank y'all. Appreciate your time.
Thank y'all.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, we'll have one more item off the agenda before we take a break. So next up is our Seguin ISD 22-23 annual staffing report. And Ms. Donita Murillo is playing the part of Cindy Moreno tonight.
And Ms. Moreno has been really sick this week, so she cannot be here this evening, but fortunately we have Ms. Murillo who is going to fill in for Ms. Moreno and give an update on our annual staffing report.
Awesome, thank you, good evening. Let's start off with my printed PowerPoint here. So thank you for the opportunity to share our staffing report. The purpose of the staffing report is really to give the board a snapshot of our overall personnel in terms of demographic information, and then the number of employees at both the professional and paraprofessional level, and then versus department and campus level. So the staffing report does connect to strategic priority number 3, which is create the conditions in Seguin ISD to recruit, retain, and engage employees. And ultimately our goal is not just to hire and recruit any old employees, it's to recruit employees that are dedicated to our students and want to inspire our student population to grow and succeed. So you should have a full copy of the staffing report up here. What I am looking at is, I'm not sure what page it is in your report, but it is the district summary where we break down the district staff by classification, race, and gender. So that's it right there. So at this time we have 689 professional staff, and again our professional staff includes our administrators, our teachers, counselors, librarians, specialists, coordinators, directors, and so on. So 687. Our paraprofessional staff sits at 220, and again our paraprofessionals include our instructional aides, our secretaries, and our clerks. And then we have our auxiliary staff at 240, and that includes our child nutrition staff, our custodial staff, transportation, and maintenance. And so we're looking at a total of 1,147 employees in the district at this time. So a couple of demographic changes over the last 3 years that we wanted to highlight. So in 2020, when we look at our breakdown of African American and Hispanic staff, in 2020 we had a total of 590 staff members in the professional classification. In 2021 we went up to 614 staff members, and now in 2022 we are sitting at 615 staff members. And so although there were fluctuations throughout those 3 years, there was an increase in the total number of African American and Hispanic staffing over those 3 years. And part of that is the availability of some EXTRA funds from 2020 to 2021 that allowed us to hire some more professional staff to be able to close some achievement gaps in our students. And I'm sorry, I know that we're looking at two different things here. In terms of our paraprofessional staff over the last 3 years, again broken down by African American and Hispanic paraprofessional staffing. In 2020, we had 156 paraprofessionals. In 2021, we went up to 173, and in 2022, we went up to 182. Again, that ESSER funding did help us recruit and hire some more paraprofessionals that are able to help support our students in the classroom. And so some action steps that I want to share that HR is implementing in order to continue to diversify our staff includes recruiting at Texas universities with a greater number of multilingual candidates and minorities. We do make sure that we sign up for job fairs in Corpus Christi and down in the valley so that we can recruit some of those bilingual candidates coming out of those education programs. We are looking at customizing our marketing efforts to focus on our diversity as a district and a community. We want to make it a practice to start sharing current campus data with our administrators to help with the recruitment process. When you think about it, recruitment and retention starts at the campus level with the culture that is built at the campus. And one of the things that we did this summer, which we thought was very successful, was we had the Refer a Friend incentive. And so out of that incentive, where our employees were referring people for us to hire, we had 11 new hires come out of that incentive. So again, we really want to recruit our administrators and our campus staff and share information with them so that they can start making purposeful decisions about how to recruit as well at the campus level. We do want to focus our retention efforts on exploring competitive increases for hourly positions, and we want to continue to focus on support for our new teachers. We also want to explore retention incentive for our returning teachers, and in February, we are conducting an organizational health inventory, the OHI, to help determine trends and patterns to support retention. So again, the OHI will take a look at campus culture. It'll help us identify what is making our teachers happy, where they need some support, again, to help our recruitment efforts. I mentioned that we're prioritizing our new teachers and we're prioritizing support for our new teachers. And so along that line, we have hired a new teacher support specialist, Mrs. Chantel Van, who is working with our new teachers and our mentors by being in those classrooms with them. She supports them by providing weekly campus visits and is in those classrooms with our new teachers, coaching them, providing some real-time feedback, visiting with them and just following up with them. Again, we know that the more we check in with our new teachers and provide support for them, the more likely it is that we will retain them for the following year. And we're also prioritizing support for our new administrators through our Director of School Leadership, Ms. Christine Bettis, who conducts weekly and monthly check-ins with our administrators and also offers some instructional support for our leaders to continue to grow their capacity as instructional leaders on the campus. And one of our other action steps that we're continuing is staff recognition. So continuing that perfect attendance incentive, making sure that our staff is on campuses, in the classrooms with our students, helping them succeed. So again, I'm sorry, I know I'm looking at a presentation that wasn't shared with you all, but I believe you have the staff. I know I see your confused faces, and I know you have the staffing report in front of you. We'll make sure to share this presentation with you as a follow-up. But thank you for the opportunity to share. And are there any questions?
Yes, sir. So are we still struggling with bilingual teachers as far as trying to find?
We are to some degree. I think we need a few, but we're always looking for bilingual teachers, and so we'll continue our recruitment efforts at those universities to just bring on those teachers as much as we can.
Because one of the conferences that I attended, there was a principal, the superintendent, I believe from Brownsville or Harlingen, and she said that she was waiting for the approval from TEA to try and recruit some bilingual teachers from the University of Monterrey. Have you heard anything of something like that?
I have not heard that. I know that we have, we're looking into doing perhaps a visa program and sponsoring some teachers from Spain to be able to hire some more teachers in those positions. So we are looking at some different initiatives. I have not heard the Monterrey one specifically, but we are looking at a program with Spain.
Because I know things like special ed and bilingual teachers are those that I demand.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No further questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. It is 8:19. I propose that we take a 10-minute break. So we'll be back here about 8:30, basically. And I may be doing a little rearranging of the presentations.
We're barely starting. We got a long way to go. Ran off. Done. Got out of here. Yeah, we need to drag.
Okay, 1 minute warning. Okay, it is 8:30, so we'll come back into open session. We'll continue with our reports and information items, so we're going to kind of move around the agenda a bit. We're going to skip ahead to item 4E, which is our elementary literacy data review. Ms. Jaramillo.
Good evening, Board President, Dr. Gutierrez, and School Board. Excited to share our literacy data as I am every year. We have our strategic priorities that we're always focused on. And then I want to get into some ISIP data. It's going to look different than how I've showed you before, but I'm going to talk us through it. So I have just taken the entire campus. So this is K-5, all combined, not specific by grade level. Before I would have showed you by grade level and the charts that have the arrows going different ways. But I thought it was important at this point to just kind of do the entire campus. So we have September, October, and November. December, we were still testing on Monday, so I didn't have that data ready for you all. But the top row is state, and the second row is district. So how we are comparing to our to other districts in the state. You will see in November that and you want to see more in levels 3, 4, 5. That's our green levels. You want to see more there than you do in levels one through 2. 1 through 2 are tier 2, tier 3 students. So you'll see the district in November is 45 on grade level, and 48 for the state on grade level. So we're right with the state. But then you'll see when I broke it down by campuses, Weinert is above the state, Vogel is at the state level, Jefferson below, McQueenie above, and a good portion above, right? Rod below, Kennedy above, and Potlawn below. And so really, that's why those campuses are in red. Those campuses are also going through an ISIP reset. I know Mr. Podworski is here. He is doing that January 3rd. We've already met with him, and he has a plan for that. And then Rodriguez recently did a reset, and then we will have Potlawn do one again, January 3rd. And what I mean by a reset is just going back over the rules, right? Talking to teachers again about, remember, it's in a testing environment. You've got to monitor your kids. We have been super focused on the math, the Eureka math, because it's new for all of our teachers, and may have let this slip. And so I want to just kind of get back in front of teachers and remind them of the why. We know the data is good. We know it's valid, and it helps us understand our module assessment scores, which will then lead us to understanding our STAR scores. Last year, we knew our STAR scores, where they were going to be, based off of our ISIP data. We could tell you exactly where we were going to go because we were so focused in on that. But we will get back there. And it just as a note, December, we are at 50% on grade level as a district. So we went up 5% increase. And so those numbers just came in, which is why I don't have them on there. Okay, so let's talk about the biliteracy kids. This is the group of our dual language kiddos, right? And so theirs looks different because they take the test in Spanish one day, and the next day they'll take it in English. So they do the same test twice, on different days though. And we have a new bilingual program, right? We are focusing on dual language. We recently shifted our language allocation. And so in kindergarten, I put that at the top for you. Kindergarten, we're 90% Spanish, 10% English. So our kiddos are getting most of their instruction in Spanish. And the 10% that's in English is just bridging across both Spanish and English, and then it's positive action. That's all they get in English. So even our English-speaking kiddos are only getting that small amount in English. They're getting the most of their instruction in Spanish. So Spanish scores should be higher, right? Because we have more kids. But look at Potlawn. They're a little bit lower in Spanish. Why? Then you have to look at set of kids. So Potlawn is recently just started their program. This is year 2 for them. They have more monolingual students than they do true bilingual students. So they have more English-speaking students in their program, which is why their scores are higher in English. It makes perfect sense. But if you look at Rodriguez and Kennedy, they're higher in Spanish than they are in English. And I think that is very relevant to where, with the language plan, right? So then you go move over to first grade, 80-20. 80% of the day is in Spanish, 20% is in English. So again, we want to see higher in Spanish as we do there, lower in English because we're not providing as much instruction. Kinder and first grade are huge foundational years. And so really focusing in on that Spanish has proven to work because we're talking about kids who are biliterate, right? We're talking about kids who are growing up their Spanish, and then they're going to grow up their English as we move further down the road. Second grade, we're 70% Spanish, 30% in English. This is a huge dip. I was just talking to Mr. Ariola about this. This is where kids dip because now we're 70-30. So now I'm bringing in more English, but I never learned the English rules, right? And English is vastly different from Spanish. Spanish is very phonetic. English is not. And so we see the struggle for kids. We see that start to happen at this point. This is also when I get phone calls about, I can't do it, we need to drop out. No, it's gonna work, I promise. Like, we're gonna work with you. But this is the year, second grade is when everyone starts to, kids start having the brain confusion. And so that's why those are a little lower. We have talked with our teachers. We just had a dual language planning to really show them this data, and so that they knew how to target their kids moving forward. Third grade, this is the year kids had a half year in classroom, in their dual language classroom. Why that's important? Because learning a second language in kindergarten on a computer screen is not, it's not gonna happen, right? That's hard. And then you're sitting at home in an English-only environment. That's hard to be getting your instruction in Spanish, and then you log out and everything's in English, right? So we weren't able to provide that environment. So you'll see those scores. They aren't as high. Second and third are our biggest pushes right now in dual language. Fourth grade, this is our first cohort, and this is when we get 50-50. And so I love this data. Look at Kennedy, 47% reading on grade level in English and 47% reading on grade level in Spanish. When I pull those reports, we have kids reading on grade level in both languages who are not dominant in either, right? That's not how they were, that's not the language they started with. And so they are dominant in both, and it's truly amazing because that's where we want to see it get to, right? And to finally see that first cohort in fourth grade, those kids have stuck it out, they've maintained in the program, they had their second grade dip and they just kept going. This group had first grade and half a year in first grade online, just to note. So we are excited to where these scores are going, and even our English only scores, right, our monolingual scores, we do know we have to push a little harder at some campuses, but this is where we were last year. So 2021, we were in December, or I'm sorry, in November, we were at 47% on level. So this year we're 45. So it's where we were last year, just so you kind of have some comparison. And then we're gonna look at our module assessments. So this is the data. The first column is STAR from last year. So end of last year, so end of third grade. And then we've got all of our modules. You'll see the dates at the top. We already have some campuses that are already performing above where they ended the year last year. So last year, Vogel had third graders. When they took STAR, they were 56, 39, 25. Approaches meets masters. They're already hitting module 4. They're already hitting 50, 25, 5. That's great. And I'll tell you, Vogel is ready to bypass a B and go straight to an A, and it is referenced here in the data, right? She's really working with that campus to improve. Jefferson and Rodriguez, as you can look at some of their data, is very reflective of what we're seeing on iSolution. Okay, also where it says no data, we had some eduphoria mishaps, and I didn't want kids to have to log back into the computer and take the test a second time. And so we just kind of called that one a scratch, so that's why those say no data. Potlan, their meets level is higher than it was at the end of last year. So you can kind of see that. These are this year's third graders, yes. And that STAR is last year's third graders. Okay. Then we go into fourth grade. Last year the district ended 71, 47, 23. We are hitting 72, 32, 11. So that's good. We want to be there. Look at Jefferson in fourth grade. The fourth grade's really hitting high numbers, which is great. I know they're not stopping with that grade level, and they continue to push during PLCs because we want kids to maintain too, right? Kennedy looking good. They're above grade or above where they were last year. This is where McQueenie, Potwan, Rod, and Vogel, we're gonna do some more work with. And again, we don't have that December assessment for some of those campuses, so it's kind of hard to tell. Weiner above where they were last. Okay. Yes, yeah, so.
There was, Eduphoria suffered a site-wide outage, and some of our testing happened during that outage, and when they submitted those tests, it wasn't recorded within the Eduphoria system.
And so we didn't want kids to log back in. It's about a 15, 20 question test, and it has an essay. So we didn't want them to log back in and retake it, because that data would not have been good.
And I think just for those who are viewing online and for our board members and people in the audience, I think it's important to talk about where you want to be mid-year, because we're not expecting that mid-year that our campuses are exceeding where we ended the year, though that is absolutely phenomenal for sure. But typically, if you can kind of talk about where we want schools to be, of course we want them to be further than they were last year. But what we kind of expect mid-year, because you look at this gap data at first glance and you're like, oh no, look at McQueen's fourth grade, model 4, 49%.
Yeah, so where the district is where we were last year, maybe 1 or 2 percentage points off. But for third grade, the jump doesn't happen until February. February is when third graders, they get a little older, reading becomes more natural to them. So as a district, we were kind of falling in 40 before last year, and so that's really where you want to see it. For fourth grade, it should be about 60%. We do have it at 72 right now, but we have 3 schools that didn't get to take the test. And so just knowing that that data is a little bit skewed. But we want to be around the 60s for fourth grade. Here goes fifth. Last year we ended as a district 75, 46, 26. And right now we're at 69, 32, 17. We should be at this spot right now as well, because we plan on getting those up to the 80s for STAR. And so this is a good spot for fifth graders. They know how to take the STAR test. They know how to take the HMH module assessments. They've done it for a few years. So that's really where we want to move to. But you can still see some of our campuses are above where they were last year. And when Systems of Great Schools did I believe it was Denmark, did the data where they looked at our assessment data, HMH is a highly reliable source. Our math assessments from last year were not highly reliable, and so we know this data reflects STAR. Okay, so next steps, continue to provide the high levels of Tier 1 instruction. We have got to get into classrooms. We have got to see what's happening, not only in math, but in reading too. Academic deans are really hyper-monitoring assessment days and strategic with their PLC planning. Principals continue to be present during PLCs and present in classrooms, like I said. We've got to get into all the classrooms to see what's happening. Provide assistance at the campus teacher level by pooling small groups and co-teaching. That's more for my team. We have 2 elementary, 1 coordinator, 1 specialist, getting them on the books to start pooling small groups at the elementary level. And then we've got our district planning days with our teacher teams. Teachers want those days because they get to come across the 7 campuses and they learn from each other, right? They all learn from each other, and so they really appreciate those days, so we need to continue to make time for those. Any questions?
I'm sorry, I have one question. Going back to that biliteracy report,
yes.
You had mentioned that at the second grade level is when they might start to drop out. How many actually made it all the way through K through 4 that you're tracking right now?
Yeah, and I have that number, but not in my notes today. So I can send that in an email.
Okay.
We did not have many though, I can tell you that. We had a couple move, and then a couple did drop off, but I can get you the numbers. You have it. Okay, anybody else?
Thank you, and thank you to our elementary principals for leading the way.
All right, next up we have our secondary monthly report. We're going to be hearing from our middle schools this month. So I guess y'all have figured out. I guess it looks like AJB is going first. And y'all had a big event tonight, so.
We did,
Good evening, President Thomas Jimenez, Dr. Gutierrez, and board. It's my pleasure to do this month's middle school report for AJB. So let me try to get this clicker going. All right, yes, we did have a big event on our campus today. So we got back from our PBL showcase, where we had the opportunity for students to stop by and showcase their projects to their parents. So these are a couple of pictures of the projects that were going on. Corico joined PBL presented yesterday with the mariachi concert. And so if you didn't, obviously, it was tight schedule. We'll be sharing, and we have shared with the community the virtual option, which will allow parents to go ahead and find the kids' project and view that from home and have their families view it over the holiday break. And so part of the PBL project, the gold standard is a public product, and so we are adhering to the golden standards from PBL works. And so I will share that link with you guys so you guys can poke around and look at some of the PBL projects because they're pretty cool stuff, as Mr. Bright had mentioned earlier in his report. All right, so getting us started here with attendance, we are continuing to rock with attendance here. And so going into December, the whole year we've had a comparative trend going up to December. And so we do wrap up as of the 9th of December at 93%, 92% there. And so we continue to do a lot of work with attendance with our students. I am part of the administrator who leads the weekly attendance meetings, and we are laser focused with a truancy officer, attendance clerk, and we are calling parents about why is your kid not at school. We have the robocall going on, catching parents at the car line to do attendance contracts, and they're trying to drive away really fast, but I'm catching them because every day matters truly. And so we are doing a lot of work. We incentivize attendance this month with the 12 days of Christmas, or that we have at school with activities for the kids to participate. There are some pictures there. And so we're doing some excellent work here with our attendance. So I did have a request to go ahead and share a little bit about our attendance for Fridays, because we do have Friday PBLs. And we have done a great job with trying to get attendance going there. It was a rough start at the beginning. I'm not going to read some numbers out to you guys here, but October 28th, we had 89% on that Friday. November 4th, we had 90% attendance. November 11th, we had 93% attendance. Thanksgiving Friday, we had a low 88%. And then December 2nd, 90% attendance. And this last Friday, 92% attendance. So we're working really hard in getting the kids to come on those Fridays and participate, wrap up the projects. We also tied our winter dance, which happens this Thursday, with a little bit of attendance incentive, plus tardies and no referrals. And so a lot of kids want to go boogie and be there for the dance. So, part of that is to be at school. We're working really hard. The last 2 Fridays were really high numbers we've had because of wrapping up the projects for tonight. All right, so moving along here with staff attendance. Again, this year goes to December the 9th. We do have 23 absences that we had for our staff this year. 21, obviously, personal sick. We have the flu, and we have, kids, children are getting sick, and so we have staff out for that. We did minimize the number of school business PD that would happen down to 2. So this would be one of the lowest months. It's obviously short in numbers as well, but it's definitely having tough conversations with teachers about, hey, being out, be there for the kids. You really notice the difference when teachers are on the campus and you have 1 or 2 teachers out. The day runs way better and smooth, and so we have to have sometimes tough conversations with adults about being present at work. Continue to help our teachers and motivate them with staff treats. We have something for all the teachers this whole entire week, and thanking them for being there. I know it's tough. We obviously continue to highlight with our movers and shakers, and then grade level awards for our teachers as we do that for our staff members. Next is our discipline data, and so again, this goes up actually to December the 2nd. And so if you're looking at overall ISS days, we do have an increase of number of ISS compared to last year. So the numbers are comparing from last year to this year. One of the things that we're doing as a district, and I've talked about this in the last couple of presentations, is we're minimizing the number of suspensions. So suspensions are down, and so obviously we're keeping the kids on our campus. You know, so for example, we have a fight. Instead of having the kids being suspended 3 days, being home and getting a pass from an incident, no, you're going to come to school. We do separate parties involved, and we make sure that the best place to learn is at school. We will hold you until we have your due process or your hearing, but we want them at school, not at home. And so obviously some of those numbers are reflected in ISS placements because we're keeping them at school as well. We have our teachers continuing to reach out to our students. Some teachers are doing some Google Meets into ISS. To continue Tier 1 instruction even in ISS. So no worksheets or packets. No, we're trying to get the teacher to still reach the kids in the ISS room as waiting for whatever incident's there. And obviously DE placement, 6th grade, we've only had one up to this year, 7th grade and 8th grade. That has increased, and I mentioned this before, some of the root causes is some mandatory placements with THC vapes on our campus, and so those are mandatory placements. So there's an increase on that in our campus. Next is Ms. Duval, and she'll go over our data.
All right. The only updates that I have tonight for you fall in our 8th grade group. Our 8th graders a week and a half ago took our interim 2 in social studies. And so 32% of our 8th graders achieved approaches. 13% received meets, and 5% received masters. And that was December the 2nd. On last Friday, they took the science interim 2, and 45% of our 8th graders achieved approaches. 14% achieved meets, and 6% achieved masters. Some of the celebrations that we took away from these interims, and a lot of this was during PLCs, the data set was open to a conversation to increase the collaboration on the TEKS, unwrapping them and noticing the level of rigor that must be there in order for students to achieve. Students at mid-year are very close to where they were at the end of last school year. And then also putting students, rostering, being very strategic about the rosters, putting them with teachers that they work with on a regular basis and that would motivate them to do their best. Next steps moving forward, teachers have had collaborative discussions about the need to increase the level of questioning that aligns very closely to the new STAR questions. This means that the scaffolds we have given students no longer can be given, and students will have to engage in academic struggle and answer the questions on their own. Use of activities that include application and conceptual learning must take place in order for the student to apply learning in assessments. Teachers use this PLC time to alter those activities, to really think through them and work through them, what's best for the student, and get them engaged in the academic struggle. Social studies teachers are spiraling those TEKS that students scored the lowest on. They're spiraling them into the CFAs to continue assessing them throughout the year. And then we are providing our social studies teachers half-day planning to work through activities to look at the TEKS, reassess, and then revamp their activities in order for students to be successful on the STAR. Any questions on the data at all?
I have one on these interim assessments. Are they just what the students have already covered, or are they, I know some of the tests include things they actually haven't covered yet. What do these look like?
It is covered on material they have covered. There's 1 or 2 questions maybe that they have not covered yet, but the majority of the content is stuff that they have gone over with. Yes, the social studies numbers, obviously there's a decrease there, but we're really doing triage in terms of half-day planning for our teachers, We have additional resource coming in for social studies, coming in January that will help support that. And we're working also with our special ed department to be able to target some more interventions for our special ed students in those classes. And so that's work already that's being laid out to help increase those numbers in social studies.
Just real quick,
Yes, sir.
there's a dip obviously from September to December, but those December numbers are higher than May of last year, at least for the meets and masters, if I'm seeing this right.
For
right?
science or social studies?
For the social studies?
Right,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
I mean, that's,
And that's a
Right.
celebration, yes.
yeah.
Yeah. We're hard on ourselves.
Really.
No, but yes, we're definitely looking at that.
But what I do appreciate, and we had the opportunity when the campus came for their data dialogue, is coming up with that plan in a timely manner and really that monitoring piece, providing that time to your teachers and responding. The responding is what's going to make a difference. And so just making sure that we're following through with what we have laid out is going to have a positive impact on how kids are performing in those areas.
Further comments? All right, thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good evening, Barnes.
President Thomas Jimenez, Dr. Gutierrez, members of the board. We're excited to be able to spend about 5 minutes or so going over all of our data. And we had a chance to present some of this today in a little bit more detail to SLT, and pretty appreciative of that opportunity as well. So getting started, Tori's going to move me along. We want to talk a little bit about attendance, and we do also have the same goal of 95%. We are improving from where we were last year, but still we need to be improving at a greater rate. Last year with the COVID year and all of that. I also wanted to be able to highlight a little bit about what's happened on our Fridays. Going back 6 weeks, we had a low during Thanksgiving of 87% on a Friday. Then we had a high the week before that of a 95%. So when it's all boiled down, right now we are at 90% daily attendance on our Fridays. So I would be interested to kind of look and see that, where we were last year, knowing that Mondays and Fridays are traditionally kind of tough. But other than that, for this month, we're currently at 92%. So we still have a few percentage points to go. And sometimes collaborating with the folks over at AJB, having the opportunity to be able to do that, we get some ideas, and we definitely want to be able to continue to reach out with some kids on contracts. And we're doing a lot with incentives. We'll all be wearing pajamas on Friday, and along with our students, and really trying to do a big thing. We have a dance at the end from 4 to 6 on Friday. And then we have a mariachi concert right after that. But there's going to be a lot. We've had dress-up days for the past, going on, it'll be 12 days on Friday. So just constantly talking about it, doing drawings. We have an awesome sponsor. Some of the things that's been happening with Krista Moreno. She's been helping us to recognize students and helping us to recognize faculty members as well. So this Thursday today we had a big cereal bar for all the teachers that were there. And then on Thursday we'll be doing hot cocoa, but they have some special kind of hot cocoa treats.
Red light.
Come by. Staff attendance, it's days out. We've only in December. Robert mentioned we've only had a couple school business days, but it has been a short month. It's tough right now. A lot of our teachers will have children. They've been out before that. But really having the teachers there, just kind of reiterating what Robert said, is going to be important. We've been doing trivia contests. We've been doing It's pretty awesome, these 50% weekly perfect attendance drawings, just all coming together, making some noise, doing the drum roll thing, and hearing the kids cheer when their teacher gets an award has been big. And then once again, just working with our partners, try to continue to improve attendance.
While we're on this one, we have a staff member out because I think we're gonna have a Barnes baby tonight. Good vibes. They said she's pushing.
On discipline, we're still kind of trending downward from last year. Something that I'm excited about for next semester, when I did the master schedule for our Friday PDLs, I was able to identify one of our restorative practices teachers who has been trained in it to give a little bit of extra time and not give her one class. So she's going to spend some time working with kids that have some conflict and try to work through those situations. So maybe some of our altercations, some of those things that are causing some of these higher numbers can be resolved before we get to this point. So that is something that we are trying to work on and change for the next semester to keep our numbers decreasing as we continue on through the school year.
All right, again, we only have our social studies and science data to report on, but we do have some good news in both of those areas. We did see a little dip in our 8th grade as far as approaches. I already met with those teachers. We've come up with a plan, adding in some time to go back over. There's 138 social studies teaks that they need to cover. That's a lot to cover. And so we're spiraling in some time for those students to be able to go over those teaks, especially the ones they weren't very strong on. So the meets and masters still looking really good for us based on last year's star. Science, we did see a good jump in our interim data this time. We went from 64 on the first interim to 68, and our meets and masters are staying in a very good area. So working with these sets of teachers, we've been able to analyze data, look at student work, leading to increased understanding for teachers and students. And our social studies scores are showing an increased mastery at midterm. And our science scores are staying in that range also. Next step forward for us would be teachers continuing to utilize the new test types. I know that's been very helpful to think about the new types of thinking our students are going to have to be doing. So that gives us a little leg up on that. And then strategies that need to be implemented to be successful. And then our PLC time, we're seeing a lot of increase in teachers being reflective of their own teaching during our internalization rehearsal process. And then of course, our social studies and our science are spiraling in those lowest peaks into their upcoming assessments and lessons to be able to make sure that our students are getting that mastery.
Any questions?
Well, I kind of have a question for both campuses, really using that word spiral. So when you're spiraling in teaks, are those just 8th grade teaks, or are you also looking at 6th and 7th grade?
We are doing that across the
Okay.
campus. So what we do is we created an action plan. So any of the teaks that are below 60%, we create an action plan with the teacher and the grade level to spiral those back into their teaching. And then we make a plan to go in and see those teaks being spiraled back in.
So one of the things that we've noticed is that when you look at with the 2 HQIMs that are being implemented, every day is spoken for. So in PLC, they're also really spending time to where they can be strategic and timely about getting, what the data shows to recover.
Any questions from anybody? It looks like we're making a lot of progress. I hope they don't lose it all over the long break. So everybody, all the teachers and the kids,
yes,
are gonna have to hit the ground running when they come back.
Definitely.
Yeah, they can do some link breaks at home over the break.
Okay, thank y'all. All right, and Mr. Mark Cantu, you'll be talking to us about our strategic plan. Thanks for being gracious about letting these folks go before you.
Appreciate it.
Good evening, President Thomas Jimenez, members of the board, and Dr. Gutierrez. So this evening, I will share with you an update. I'm also going to share the space with Mr. Hoffman. He will share a bright spot and an area of focus. Always really important to remind us, right, what is this work about? So every meeting, even though we're really familiar with our strategic plan, just reminding us that we do have a lot of work, and we continue to move the work, and this is what drives our strategic direction every single day. So we're going to dive deep first into our task force dashboard. One of the feedback items last month was to compare how we were doing from August to November, or from one month to the other. And you can tell here that with the Equitable Student Experiences Task Force, we remain on task with 3 of the items and nearly off task with the other one. We're not ready to jump deeper into that work, as we're still trying to ensure that we go deeper in the exceptional pathways planning with counselors. Our College Career and Military Readiness Task Force, as you can see, they remain on task with everything except for one, which is complete, so that is still true today. Our Curriculum and Blended Learning Task Force remains on task with 2 of the initiatives. The one that we're still waiting on, just not to add anything to teachers' plates right now, is having those campus task force members come together quite yet. Our HR and staff culture, on track as we were in in October, and complete to task. For our Community Engagement Task Force, we're on track for all those, and you will hear from Mr. Hoffman today. Our Whole Child Task Force, you can see we have made some progress in 2 of the areas there compared to last month. And our School Discipline and Safety Task Force has also made some progress compared to last month. And finally, our Facilities Task Force remains on track with all of their items. So now to share our bright spot, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hoffman. He will share the bright spot, and then he will also share an area of focus, and then I'll come back and focus on the last piece and close out.
Thank you, Mr. Cantu. Again, trustees, Dr. Gutierrez, good evening. Just a little bit of foundational information on the Community Engagement Task Force. We have strategic priority number 3, which is developing relationships with families in the community. We're responsible for goal number 6, in which the district will improve stakeholder community perception as determined by the Net Promoter Score. You'll remember that Net Promoter Score is based upon the Vision Week surveys, in which we ask the community how likely they are to recommend the Seguin ISD. And Mark, tell me it's 8, 9, and 10, I believe?
You want 9s and 10s.
9s and 10s, okay. It's cheating there a little bit. 9s and 10s are the ideal responses that we want to get as favorable Net Promoter Score data. So our performance objectives are listed there. They're quantifiable. They're based on surveys. 6.1 is based on the Panorama survey to increase the number of parents who are involved in parent groups on campuses. That number was a paltry 11%. A lot of that had to do with COVID, because essentially we were shut down and we did not have a whole lot of parent activities during school time when that initial survey was taken. So then we have performance objective 6.2, which again is Vision Week and the Net Promoter Score we talked about a minute ago. Objective 6.3 is by spring of 2023, increase the percentage of parents by 10% who indicate that the school communication for involvement opportunities is favorable. Again, based on the Panorama score, so we can make it quantifiable. Our strategic actions for this fall are listed on the right-hand side. The bottom 3 aren't new. We've been doing those for years. But as part of the strategic plan, we realized what we've been doing for years isn't necessarily working the way we want it to. So we added 2 strategic actions. 6.11 is to create strategic and meaningful family and parent-friendly campus activities. And 6.1.3 increase opportunities to offer parental involvement partnerships to include professional learning. And as we move forward to our bright spots, we are on track right now as of this time, and we continue to work together with campus teams to improve that community perception. The highlights, we heard about parenting partners from Rodriguez. They had 5 graduates back in November. Well, guess what? The good news is that we had 28 graduates in the program throughout all our elementary schools in November and December. So it's an elementary initiative. All of our elementary campuses are doing it. This was the fall cohort. We'll do it again in the springtime. So we're hoping to increase that number. Parenting partners was the result of a brainstorm. Cynthia Gordon, I don't think she's here anymore, but oh, there she is. Hey, Cindy. Sorry, but this was Cindy's idea to get parents involved in our schools, and she looked and researched, found and identified some federal funds that could be used at the campuses to have this. And so, without going into too many details, this company we're working with pays for the training of staff and unlimited resources for a year in order to make it happen at our campuses. So I think you can see how effective it was at Rodriguez. It's been effective at all of our elementaries, and we aim to increase that number this spring. Also, we hosted back in November the first monthly collaborative webinar for campus and departmental communications liaisons, really focusing on social media support and best practices. Tanisha Hearn got on Google Meets, invited all of our departmental and campus folks who deal with web updates, deal with campus departmental social media sites, basically spent 15-20 minutes with them going over some best practices, tips, Q&A, and this is something we plan to do with them monthly to help grow that capacity in that area. And also, the bottom highlight is that we are adding and additionally supporting our campuses by sharing their community engagement events on our district social media sites. We know they're pushing it on their campus sites, but the district sites have the benefit of having a larger audience, more followers, so we want to make sure that we're including those campus informational pieces for parents on the district side as well. In areas of focus, we constantly continue to monitor the stakeholder perception of the district. This is something that's not going to go away. This is not there's really no end goal in this. This is something that is just, we're going to constantly monitor and evaluate. And in order to help make this happen, we're, in addition to adding and implementing and maintaining what we talked about a few minutes ago in the last slide, we're constantly reviewing our Vision Week findings. Again, we'll be getting findings done this spring to look at our Net Promoter Score and identify trends in community perception. And Mr. Cantu is going to go over some of those trends here in the next few minutes. Also, we're working with the Office of Innovation, Mr. Cantu and Ms. Allison Pake, to regularly ensure that we're meeting the outcomes expected through systems of great schoolwork. So those are our bright spots. We can hope to bring some more to y'all here in the near future. Any questions?
I didn't know the parenting partners were at each campus, so that's fabulous news. I don't know who even told that. Oh.
Yeah, as they've been graduating, they've been on this.
Yes.
Absolutely. But that's wonderful news, and hopefully we'll see some increase this spring. But I'm wondering, since sending out the grant and it's for this year, do you think it's going to be sustainable?
Well, it's federal funds. Tony's got the money tree outside his office, and it kind of depends on what it's looking like for next year and what that federal funding looks like. But it is ESSER funding, so it's federal funding through the Every Student Succeeds Act. So if that money continues to come through, I imagine it's something that we can continue to look at or possibly emulate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to build off of what Sean was sharing here around Goal 6 and community perception, and specifically talk about that Net Promoter Score. So the Net Promoter Score is a new metric to us. You all have met Mr. Klusman, Duncan Klusman, and when he was meeting with us and we were setting goals, this was one of the goals that as a school board was really important to you all, right? How are people feeling and thinking about our school district? What we want is those green smiley faces, right? Is those 9s and 10s. Those are the promoters. Those are the folks that are active who, when you run into them in HEB and you say, how's Seguin ISD? They're going to say, it is tremendous. There are some great things happening. We're a shining star. We're the best district around, right? The 7s and 8s are going to be more neutral. They'll say, yeah, they're doing pretty good. We do some great things, but we could probably improve in some others. And then what we don't want are the distractors, right? Those are the ones that are saying, there's probably nothing good happening in Seguin ISD. You should probably move your channel. So it is our aim to be at 7 or above, but we really want to be where everybody is promoting the district. So how have we fared? We asked our students, 3rd through 5th grade, this question. How much do you love your school, right? A 0 to a 10, same scale. 0 is not at all, and 10 is the most. Our 3rd through 5th graders love our schools. We asked our 6th to 12th grade students, would you recommend your school to a friend or sibling? Our 6th to 12th grade students don't love our schools as much as our elementary students do. And then we asked our parents, would you recommend Seguin ISD to a friend? So last year was the first time we did this. We had never administered a survey in this way, which was the Vision Week survey. And you can see we had 893 respondents. This year we said, okay, now we know what this is about. Let's sell this, let's put this out there, let's promote it. Mr. Hoffman, the campuses, his team, the campus teams did a really good job, and we got 3,521 respondents, right? Again, still most of them, those are students, so we have a lot of work to do with parents and the community, but we will continue to push that out once a year. So what does the data say? We can compare 21-22 to 22-23. Being very cognizant, though, that our sample sizes are vastly different, right? 893 to 3,521. But I still want us to make some comparisons. So back in 21-22, you can see the number of detractors, the number of people who are passive, and the number of people who are promoters. And then you can see the same in 22-23. Our overall score, you see that scale at the bottom, it ranges from 100 all the way to -100, where 0, right, is the neutral, begins to be good, but we want to be great or excellent. Overall, in 21-22 and 22-23, we were a -3. So right at the brink of being good, right? So we want to ensure that our community and our parents and our students, because this includes everyone, are promoters of our district. So we have some work to do there. I'm going to break it down now with elementary. Again, look at the sample size, especially look at Jefferson. Only 3 students took that last year. So you really can't compare 3 students to 135 students. 87 students at Kinnicky to 251. But we wanted to put it up there, right, just to show how did we do the first year that we tried this out compared to where we are now. Here's where we were now. So 18, 42, 44, 11, 31, 28, and 12. Again, we want to be in green, right? But anything above 0 is in the good range. So what we need to do is what's happening at Rodriguez, right? That our students are saying that they really love the school. What's happening at McQueen? What's happening at Kennedy? That's not happening so much, for example, like at Wyandotte or Jefferson. Right? So those are conversations that we can have for students. And again, these are just students. We did the same thing for secondary. That should have shown the data. I'm not sure why that animation didn't come through. But what we want, again, is not to have those red zones. Right? So what's happening? Same question at AJB, at Barnes, and at the high school that our students are saying that they don't promote our schools. They do promote the early college high school, right? Those students are in early college high school, and then you can see what's same question, what's happening at Sager that everybody loves there. Right? So those are the questions that we have to continue to ask ourselves and then have conversations with students. So part of this, what we did was we had focus groups with students, and we will continue to have conversations with students to talk to us about what's happening, right? The biggest complaint from our secondary students is that they feel that they're not heard, which makes sense, right? That's why we see this data. Same thing with parents. Again, on the PowerPoint, you should be able to see the data on the other side. But for some reason, the animation isn't working here. Overall, parents scored is an 8, which is in the good range, but of course, we want to be in the green. And then the same thing with community. Overall, we scored a 4, but we want to be in the green. So what are we going to do? Our next steps is we have the full vision report that we received back in November. And it's already posted. We've shared it on our website, and we've sent it out to our parents in November. In January, at our next meeting in January, we're going to sit down with principals and have a deeper conversation about here's what either students, parents, or community are feeling about your campus. What can we do to turn it around? Rodriguez students scored the campus the highest. Actually, MBLC students scored the campus the highest. What's happening at MBLC? Right, versus what's happening at the high school, versus what's happening at the middle schools. And then we will administer, because we want to grow from beginning of year to end of year, a 1-question survey, very similar to ask them again. And what we want to see is growth from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. But growth is not going to happen if we're not out in community, right? Growth is not going to happen if we're not very intentional. Growth is not going to happen if we don't respond to the survey. So those are the next steps that we need to figure out before now in April. And as Mr. Hoffman said, is we don't, until we get to 100%, we're not going to be okay, right? We're not going to be satisfied with that. But it's going to be a lot of work to get there. But we're committed to the work. We're committed to continue to measure this. And we need everybody's support and making sure that we have that high net promoter score. Questions, comments, suggestions?
Can you expand on what secondary students may mean by they're not being heard?
I can't, but I can go back to the focus group data and delve a little deeper. But that was the comment that we heard over and over. The folks that did the focus groups were actually Cospiro. It was the consultants. And so I wasn't there. They felt that it was better if nobody associated with the campus was there or the district, so that they could gather it as a third party and it could be very neutral. And that was one of the big statements that they put in bold. Students felt that they weren't heard. But we have all the data, we have the responses, and we can go deeper.
I mean, apparently the students at MBLC are being heard. Could that have a lot to do with class size and just numbers?
That's my hunch,
yeah,
right?
Mine as well.
MBLC functions with about 60 to 80 students and about 6 to 8 staff.
It's also interesting to me that the schools that saw their star
test scores increase are also getting better points in the survey.
Correct, yeah, there's a direct correlation, I noticed that as well.
Any other questions or comments? I'm sorry?
You can do it.
You can articulate it.
Do you think it's maybe the interaction between student and staff is where we're missing in that area? There's not that formation of bond between a teacher and a student that maybe NBLC is doing that or somewhere else.
Yeah, I think of every time I meet with, and I wish he was here because he could say it way better than I can, with Mr. Law, right? Mr. Law is super intentional with how he interacts with students as well. He has Taco Tuesdays, right, for attendance. He gives a little gift bag to students on their birthday. He personally gives it to them, and they celebrate and they make it a big deal in class. These are our most struggling, secondary students, but they love it, right?
And they're being successful.
And they're being successful, exactly. And I think the biggest thing, and it's also tied to what you shared, to your comment, when students and staff see progress, right, they begin to feel better about themselves. That rubs off on students, right? When the teachers feel it, when the administrators feel it, it rubs off on students. If it rubs off on students, when students come home and you have conversations as parents, it rubs off on the parents, right? So success just continues to bring more success, and I think that has to do with it as well.
It's like cheering for a winning team.
Exactly right.
Definitely something to look at closer.
And I'd be curious to see what the end of year data looks like with especially the middle schools having time to implement these purposeful Fridays. They're doing more to recognize and celebrate kids, doing more to recognize and celebrate staff. They're being more intentional, just as Mr. Law is doing at the NBLC. And so it will be interesting to see that after they have an opportunity to work through this and look at the data, that feedback, and build upon what they've put in place this year, if that shows progress.
I also like the community involvement aspect of it too, because we have more of our community coming in and acknowledging the work that our teachers are doing and that our students are doing, and that has to filter down to the students as well.
So this consultant group, they meet with students and get feedback. Have they given more, I guess, would they ask for more details as to the why? Or can you give examples of some instances that are not being heard?
That data they have shared with us, their biggest focus was around attendance also. And so a lot of the things that we received feedback from, or a lot of their questions, I should say, were around attendance. So the data that we received from Cospiro was about relationships, was about attendance. Those were the biggest focus areas. So I know we have the data in there, it's just about digging deeper and then inviting them to continue that conversation. They met with students from the high school, they met with a couple students from the high school, I don't remember exactly how many, and then they met with students from MBLC, but we do have that data.
Remind me again of when that survey took place.
October,
October.
mid-October, or
September?
September. Oh, okay.
September.
That's a long time ago. There's so many restorative practices that are taking place at the middle schools.
We aimed, now I remember, we aimed for about 6 weeks into
6
the school.
weeks in, okay. Anyway, I have a feeling things might turn around.
I agree.
Yeah. Any further comments or questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Glancy.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up on our agenda is to go into closed session. We will adjourn into closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Opens Meeting Act. Texas Government Code 551.071, 551.074, 551.129. Consultation with legal counsel, including possible telephone consultation with legal counsel as necessary to address legal concerns, implications, and answer any legal questions regarding posted agenda items. Taking a hearing about our safety audit findings. Also pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074 to discuss personnel matters, including appointment, employment evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, or dismissal of an employee. It is 9:31, and we'll now go into closed session. 9:57, we're reconvening to open meeting. There'll be no action. Moving on into our consent agenda items. Item 7A is the approval of board minutes of the regular meeting, November 15th, 2022, and special meeting on November 18th, 2022. 7B, approval of proposed budget amendments and financial statements for October 2022. 7C, approval of district-wide vehicle maintenance parts and services, which is RFP 2101, or 21-01. D, authorization of agreement between Seguin ISD and Tangram Rehabilitation Network for residential care services at a cost of $101,600. Item 7E, consideration and approval of School Health Advisory Council Annual Report, SHAC goals, and committee members. Item 7F, personal information of professional employees. And item 7G, to acknowledge Public Information Act request for November 2022. Does any trustee want to pull out of one of these out for individual consideration? If not, do I hear a motion for approval of the consent agenda items as listed? I have a motion from Mr. Amador. Do I hear a second? A second from Ms. Crittenden. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, moving into our action items. First up, we have consideration and approval to utilize RAD Kids, Kid Safe, Teen Safe instructional materials and programming. Good to see you again.
Good evening again. Thank you guys for this time again. So you'll recall at your board meeting in June that you adopted a resolution charging the SHAC to make a recommendation related to Senate Bill 9 and House Bill 1525. The Senate Bill 9 component of that addresses the topics of child abuse, dating violence, family violence, and sex trafficking. And so what that Senate bill has asked school districts to do is to have SHACs make a recommendation on curriculum that's going to address those topics, and then bring that recommendation to you all to formally adopt. Now, RAD Kids is going to be something that sounds familiar because we've done that in Seguin ISD for a number of years in partnership with the Child Advocacy Center as an elementary intervention. In consultation with our legal counsel, they advised us that there's no grandfather clause written into this, so that's why we have suspended our use of RAD Kids pending this recommendation from the SHAC. And during that time of suspension, we've also evaluated another program that it's one program that's broken into two sections, so Child Safe and Teen Safe. And so really what we're coming to tonight with a unanimous recommendation from the SHAC is to adopt both RAD Kids and Child Safe and Teen Safe to address these topics. And I'm just going to real briefly run through these just to make sure that we have an awareness of what we're talking about. So RAD Kids, really the distinguishing thing about RAD Kids is that it's a skill-based program. So not just the theory, but instead students are exposed to opportunities to practice some of that violence prevention. And it's a very deep curriculum in that it touches all kinds of topics, everything from bike safety all the way to sexual abuse and violence at that age-appropriate level of elementary school. The way that we have delivered RAD Kid programming is in partnership with the Child Advocacy Center and the Sheriff's Office. And in an ideal situation, we have a sheriff, a PE teacher, and an advocacy team member all there delivering curriculum. It's 12 weeks long, and we've done it in second grade with a pretty formalized graduation ceremony at the end.
And that program, there's nothing wrong with it. The logistics on it are a little bit tough because it's involved so many different agencies and the length of time. So I think, if that's okay, I'll just jump right into the child safe, teen safe, talk more about that. Steve, do you want to jump into that one?
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, please.
There are kids that probably missed that because of COVID.
Yes.
Do we have any plans to catch them out?
We do, and I think the Child Safe and Teen Safe will address some of that. So both of these programs are evidence-based. So the Monique Burr Foundation has created this Child Safe and Teen Safe program. It's a K-12 program, and if you'll jump to the next slide, yes. So here are some of the topics. So you're going to notice that there's a lot of overlap with RAD kids. And then there's a couple of things that are in addition to what RAD kids was doing. And Steve, if you'll jump to the next one. So this is Child Safe. Here's the Teen Safe. What you'll notice here is that in those grades 6 through 12, and there's a unique curriculum for each grade level as well. But now we're going to get into some of those topics that would be more age-appropriate: sexual abuse, sex trafficking, sexual assault, relationship abuse. So some of that is scaffold according to the age that they're working with. I'm also fascinated by the mental health additional components that are included in that as well. The next slide will talk to you about, this is just some of the safety rules that are part of the branding. So again, all of these programs, it's real important to have kind of creating this common language that would repeat itself in different applications as you deliver the curriculum in different grade levels. So those things would continue. And Steve, this one, the logistics here, what I want to show you is that, so Teen Safe, Child Safe, 2 55-minute classroom lessons. So you can see versus 12, that's going to be a little bit easier for us to get that content out there. There are additional lessons for the mental health piece, 1 for the elementary, and then 3 additional for the 6 through 12. So the way that the SHAC wanted to view this is they wanted to look at the RAD kids and acknowledge that that is a sound program. Logistics are a little bit tough on that. Certification is a little bit tough. It's a 40-hour certification, which is really hard to pull staff for 40 hours of training. It's very expensive. And we're at that point where we need to train some more folks. So what the SHAC would like to recommend, and the school district administration supports this idea, is using RAD kids in applications that would really suit itself to this. So maybe it's ACE after school programming where we could do some specialized things with RAD kids. Maybe it's summer school settings or summer camp settings. And then really leaning into Child Safe and Teen Safe as being the universal application to addressing these topics that we know are so important. And we want to make sure that we're making decisions that allow us to get the most information into the kiddos as possible in an efficient and effective way. So they're asking, or the recommendation is that we would adopt all of these for possible use. And that what we would do is we'd fine-tune our location of where that delivery happens based on us interpreting where we're at in the year, what courses might serve themselves well to have these added into. Right now, it's easiest for us to provide this kind of programming in a required class, whether that be PE at the elementary grade, or you'll remember, as soon as they get past 6th grade, we don't necessarily see them in PE again because they might be doing athletics or athletics. So really, once we get past the 6th grade, we have to find other opportunities. Maybe that's a biology class, maybe that's a history class, but where we can have that commonality where every kid in school, we can show that they get that. So that gives us a little bit of an opportunity to make decisions year to year based on what courses might be offered and where that best placement would be. So the action item is to request your support of utilizing those 2 programs with 3 different titles of RAD Kids, Child Safe, and Teen Safe. And I recognize I've gone quick, so if I have gone too quick, I certainly would be happy to slow down and explain anything more detail.
Well, I noticed in our consent agenda items, we have a lot of new members on the SHAC committee. So I think that it's significant that that even the new members have recognized that this is something we need to push forward.
Yes, thank you. And, you know, to further that point, the Senate Bill 9 would require that we do 2 meetings about the Kids Child Safety. So we had 2 SHAC meetings this fall where it was shared and discussed at length. And at the end of that, they actually moved kind of quicker than I expected. Someone made a motion, and before I knew it, it was unanimous consent, and here we are. So, yeah.
In the teen area, I forget what it was labeled as, but some of that social emotional learning, can that be covered on those Fridays maybe, that they're already doing some of that?
I think that would be a great application for that, if we could figure out what, how we can universally get every kid through that. I think that's a great example of a mental opportunity there.
There's probably quite a bit of overlap if you look at the curriculum that they're doing in that Character Strong.
Yes, yes, I think there probably will be some correlation there. Yeah, I don't know that that Character Strong will go into the level of nuance that some of this would, but certainly like the digital citizenship, I imagine is overlapping there. Maybe the cyberbullying, that type of thing. Certainly self-awareness and that kind of stuff would be part of it. Yeah, that's a good point.
Any further questions or comments? If not, do I hear a motion for approval? Ms. Duncan has made a motion to approve the use of Rad Kids Child Safe and Teen Safe programming and related materials for abuse prevention instruction. Do I hear a second? Second from Mr. Amador. Any further questions or comments? If not, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right, next up is item 8B, which is discussion and approval of fund balance compliance requirement.
Is it possible to expand that a little bit, please? Might be as good as it's gonna get. We can work with that then. So, we do this annually after the audit is complete. Technically, we could have done it the same night as the audit, but for various reasons, we decided to hold off until December to go ahead and do this calculation. This is a requirement for District Board Policy CE Local. In essence, what that policy says is that the district will maintain unassigned fund balance sufficient to cover 90 days worth of expenditures as a minimum. And we can't expect that fund balance is going to remain at that level all year long, because the whole purpose of fund balance, as implied by the board policy itself, is for the purpose of cash flow. And so what happens in a school district is that our cash does not all come in equal amounts over the course of the year like you might expect in a business. We get a relatively small influx of cash the first of the year through the state. And then we go into the tax collection season, December, January, even into February, and we're collecting a lot of our tax revenue over that period of time. And then there's a small gap, and then the state kicks in the state funding that offsets our tax collections to get to our target revenue. So what that means is throughout the course of the year, our expenditures pretty much are 1/12, same expense all year long. But the revenue side doesn't come in equal parts like that. So our cash balances can fluctuate quite a bit. Fund balance is intended to help districts through that period. Now, of course, that's if you're really operating close to that 90-day level. We're operating, as you'll see, with a much greater fund balance than that, but we do dip into fund balance technically throughout the course of the year. And that's expected, and that's unavoidable. But we do the calculation to meet CE local annually at the conclusion of the year. It's a look back, where did we land, and do we meet the requirement? And so we'll take a look at that. Every reference that I've made here will take you back to the financial statements that are in the audit report. So we begin the calculation with the 21-22 beginning total fund balance. And you can get that number by looking at the 21-22 Schedule C2 of the audit for that year. So if you go to that schedule, and you'll be able to identify the schedule because they're clearly marked in the audit report, you'll find this number, $31,689,946 of total fund balance. Now, over the course of the year, we had revenue, which is identified in the C2 schedule of that same audit, and we also had expenses, which were identified in the C2 schedule of that same audit, for a result of operations for the year of $3.9 million. In other words, revenue exceeded expense to the tune of $3.9 million in the school year 21-22. And again, you can identify all of this from the audit. We had some additional transfers in, other sources of revenue that are outside the norm. They're not normal operating revenues. The biggest component of that came from the sale of some of our properties. We had a sale to the city of Seguin of our tennis courts for $200,000. We also had another vacant property that sold for $700,000, and some other smaller things. But they all are non-operating revenues, but we still recognize them. They still come into the general operating fund, and therefore are a part of the calculation. So when you put all those together, you come up with a calculation that shows the 21-22 ending available fund balance, $36,570,000. And then there are some specific things associated with fund balance that are what we would call non-negotiables. They're regulatory requirements or they're audit requirements. They're things that restrict your fund balance for one reason or another. And so they would not be a part of what we call unassigned fund balance. Unassigned fund balance is simply savings that the district has that it can use at its discretion for various things. But just like a savings account, it doesn't have a constant influx of new savings. When you spend your savings, then your savings is spent until you save more money. So it's unassigned fund balance is like that money in the piggy bank. You want to spend it on one-time items. You don't want it to be spent on recurring items to the extent you can avoid that. So in 21-22, we had an ending unassigned fund balance of $35,839,125. So I've got that highlighted in orange for a purpose we'll see here momentarily. So Mr. Gonzalez, if you would be so kind, thank you. So now we get into the calculation that meets CE local. The 21-22 total expense, as per the C2 schedule in the audit, and we actually have it reflected up above as well, is $62,438,594. We had some, just like we had some non-operating revenue, we also had some non-operating expenses. And the primary thing that constitutes a non-operating expense is this. From time to time, we will approach the board to use fund balance for an initiative of one form or another, a one-time cost, a non-operating cost. We're not using that year's revenue from taxes. We're not using that year's revenue from state funding for whatever that fund balance assignment request is. It's a one-time purchase using previously saved dollars, right? So it's a fund balance use. Well, when we go to actually use the money, when we spend the money, the accounting treatment, the requirement is we have to bring it up into our budget and we have to show it as an expense. So it looks like an expense for that year. And from an audit standpoint it is, but it's a non-operating expense. It's not a recurring expense associated with current year revenue. So we have to back those out. And we had non-operating expenses that were fund balance assignment uses for the 21-22 school year of $2,290,114. And you'll notice what I've done, because the first question a reasonable person is going to ask is, where did we spend $2.3 million in fund balance last year? And so this is a list of all the things that we approached the school board for last year with regard to fund balance assignment. Now you'll notice we requested $3.2 million, but we only spent $2.29 million. Part of that is because sometimes when we approach the board for a fund balance assignment, it's an estimate. We don't know the exact cost. Now, keep in mind, if the board assigns fund balance for a particular purpose, and it happens to be more than what we need, we do not have the luxury from an administrative standpoint to just go ahead and spend the dollars on something else. We spend it for the purpose that we were given permission to spend it on. If we have extra, it goes right back into fund balance. It does not get spent on something else. So the dollars are not at risk, but this is the column that shows the detail of the actual expense, and you'll notice it ties that $2.29 million. So if you'll scroll back up, please, sir. So what we've done, we've taken out those non-operating expenses to get to an actual operating expense number of $60,148,480. Those are your recurring costs as we knew them for the 21-22 year to operate the school district in the general operating fund. Has nothing to do with the debt service fund, got nothing to do with any of our federal programs, simply the general operating fund. Your annual cost of operations in 21-22, if nothing ever changed, nobody got any raises, light bills don't go up, if nothing changed, every year we would spend $60,148,480. So CE Local says that we need to take 25% of that, which is another way of saying we need to calculate 90 days worth. So if you take that $60,148,480 and you divide it by 360 days and then multiply that by 90 days, you'll come up with 25%. So it's the same thing. 25% equates to $15,037,120. So for 21-22, the unassigned fund balance minimum requirement in order for us to have 90 days worth of cash in the bank, we can never allow or as I mentioned earlier, we had a cash flow that would dip into it potentially, theoretically. But what we want is at the end of the year, we need to make sure that our unassigned fund balance is at a minimum $15,037,120. Well, we did the calculation here earlier, right there. Our unassigned fund balance was actually $35,839,125. That means that we have an additional $20,802,005 in excess of that 90-day requirement. That is a very high number, even for Seguin ISD, who typically does have a high number for fund balance, and we do that intentionally for various purposes. This number is a little bit higher than you would normally expect, though, because what we have done is a TEA treatment of COVID-19 funding, and we've moved as many dollars as we could qualify into ESSER to draw those dollars down, bring them into our general operating fund. We're not going to change any of the planned use of those funds, but about $5 million worth of COVID funds are embedded in that $20 million. So if it weren't for the additional $5 million in COVID funds, the excess capacity number that you're seeing here at $20 million would be somewhere closer in the neighborhood of $15 million, but still $15 million without the COVID residual. So I hope I've, it's not an overly complicated calculation, but at least not, I don't feel like it is, but maybe the way I've said it comes across as convoluted, so happy to answer any questions.
Yes, sir, Mr. Guerra.
So do we have one more year on the ESSER funds, or are we done?
Well, because of the way we treated this, we have those ESSER funds until we spend them. But we have a plan in place. I think the vast majority of those funds will be completely gone after the end of this school year.
So we did say you have to get it spent by this date.
Right, and we met that requirement by moving general operating fund expenses into the COVID. It's a technicality, and it's best practice according to TEA. We really followed the letter according to TEA, which is buy yourself some time, because it's not easy to strategically and effectively spend what we had was $13 million. Just jump in and spend $13 million. Sounds like a great plan, but it takes a lot to do that, especially these days if you're buying any kind of equipment of any nature. You never know what supply chain issues you're going to run into, and we did run into some of that. So spending the money has been problematic for a lot of districts. This buys you some time and still meets all of the federal requirements. So we've met the requirements in terms of ESSER. We're doing some reporting now on it, but in terms of drawing the funds down, we've met those requirements.
Any further questions? Once again, you took something complicated and helped us understand it. Appreciate that. If there are no further questions, do I hear a motion for approval? I have a motion from Mr. Amador to approve the fund balance compliance requirement. Do I have a second? Second from Mr. Jenkins. There's no further discussion. Everybody in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. And up, you're select. Item 8C is to adopt a resolution for the assignment of fund balance.
And if you could go ahead and scroll down to there should be a grid that shows the numbers. There you go. So just down at the bottom of that where they're listed independently. So now that we've identified the fact that we have $20 million of excess capacity, this is the appropriate time each year that we come to the board with what we know we would like to use fund balance for next year. Now, some of these things we don't really have, we're not obligated as a district to represent some of these to the board. Things that the board has already given approval for, but were not completely spent. Those initiatives still apply. So for example, with the first item here, high school mariachi uniforms and instruments, there's a residual amount from what was requested in the 21-22 school year that is rolling over to the current year. And again, that speaks to supply chain issues. And so we've got $26,500 remaining. I think that's what it says. Yeah. So $26,500 remaining in that particular line item. It was previously approved by the school board, and all of the items where I've listed it in parentheses and italicized, I'm indicating that we're representing this as it's effectively an information item because we've already gotten approval, but I want you to know exactly how much we need out of that for the current year. So that's what this first item is. The second item as well, the high school mariachi band uniforms. We've got district telephone system replacement, still some residual that's rolling forward. We have baseball, softball complex design. It was approved back in August of last year. The design is effectively complete, but we need to roll forward some because we haven't finished paying the architect. The pre-bond conceptual designs for various projects, and the details of that, I'd have to go back and look. But at several of the other projects, we had some conceptual designs prepared for the bond presentations, basically. The pre-bond planning costs, we've got that that's rolling forward. And then the rest of these from there on, these are the actual new requests associated with the current year. And you'll notice, I said earlier it was a $5 million COVID funding reserve. My apologies, I was only off $1 million. But it's actually $6 million. What can I say? It is what it is, but it's there for you to see. It is $6 million, not $5 million. So the items that we are requesting now is we want to go ahead and jump into some safety and security project design with our architect. We also have annually, we set aside some funds for DI travel, for globals. We have some, as a district, we've recently experienced some added travel costs for advancements in competition. We want to set aside some dollars for that, so we're prepared for it. If we can, and as I mentioned earlier, if we don't use it, we can't use it for some other purpose. So this is just earmarking some funds so they're available should the need arise. Additional teacher pay for October 19th, 2022. That was an intercession day. It was a contract day as well, but teachers doing intercessions on that one day were given an incentive for that particular day of instruction. Remaining 21-22 early education allotment, that is a distribution from the state, and we're required to spend it on some very specific things. We weren't able to spend all of it in the prior year, so TEA gives us the opportunity to earmark it for the next year. Actually, we can do it up for 2 years. And so we have these early education dollars that we want to earmark for that particular purpose. We've got the 6th of our 15 payments for the Qualified Zone Academy bond, which I want to remind everyone is it is payable over 15 years. However, it is at 0% interest. $10 million was the amount that was afforded the district back when we executed those notes. But again, an absolute 0% interest over 15 years. And then the COVID funding reserve, as you can see there, at $6 million. So those are the items that are new for the current year. A total of $7.8 million. Obviously, the vast majority of that is coming from the COVID reserve, and we would still have $13 million, should this be approved, still have $13 million of excess unassigned fund balance in, over and above the requirement from CE local.
Madam President, I move to adopt the resolution for the assignment of funding balance.
I have a motion from Ms. Duncan. Do I hear a second?
I'm sorry, I've got some questions.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
About this.
I did not see your hand up.
Oh, I didn't hear you say it. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, so.
There's still time for questions.
I just wanted to clarify something for me. So because we didn't spend all the money from the 21-22, like for the baseball and softball field design, the new complex design. In 21-22, we approved, the school board approved $410,000, right? But we only used $115,000 in that design. We only paid $115,000 last year.
Right, the design was, through the end of the fiscal year, the design was not complete. And so in the current year, if the audit was done sooner, where we could do the calculation we did in the previous item, then I would come to you a lot sooner than this. But I don't like to come to the board for fund balance assignment until you've seen the CE local calculation or right now, as soon as we could provide that. So that's why this hasn't been requested as a reassignment until now.
So we still owe
with the $285,000 for the baseball and softball complex design?
As of the beginning of this fiscal year, so as of July 1, yes.
Okay. So that's not a new, I mean, I'm just looking at, what happened last month and everything like that. I don't want the voters to think that we're going ahead and spending money to design the baseball, softball complex. We already requested that design, had it done, just hadn't received the item until after the new fiscal year started. So now we're having to go back, because it was like a down payment, $115,000 down payment. They give us the design, we could pay them off, but because it didn't finish by the beginning of the fiscal year, that's why we have this on here again. It's not something
Essentially,
we,
yes.
not just, okay.
Yeah, the design started prior to the end of the fiscal year, and the design work is billed more or less monthly, probably more like 6 months, or 6 weeks, every 6 weeks or so. The architect will do an incremental billing, like a construction draw type thing. And so at the end of the fiscal year, they had only billed us up to a certain point, but the fund balance assignment had already been set aside for the full cost of the design. We've since basically paid the majority of the design. There's still a little bit left. They're just wrapping up. So that was all done in anticipation of the bond, and perhaps, the anticipation and appropriate that the organization was hopeful that it would pass. But even though it didn't pass, the design is still an owned document for the district. So whatever funding capacity, whether it's a future bond or some other methodology, the design is signed, stamped, sealed, and is now in the ownership of Seguin ISD.
Perfect, thank you.
And I think that's a good question to ask, because the bond did not pass, but a practice in many districts is to go ahead and go out for that design, so that once a bond does pass, then you can begin the construction right away. And that's what we did with the stadium. So as soon as bond 2019 passed in May, we were moving dirt almost that next day, because we already had that design. And so conversations will continue regarding the baseball, softball, because I know people out there are wondering, and they're seeing this on the agenda, that is still an area of focus for us here. And the design is something that we will have, and whether we go out for another bond or we look at other funding sources, we own that, we have it, whether it's 5 months from now, 2 years from now, or five years from now.
I had a question as well. The number of these, it looks like about $80,000 you have reimbursable from bond 2022. So exactly how would that money come back in?
Very simple. Once we sell bonds, which we have not done yet, we won't do that until March.
Just wanted to make sure that's out there too.
Okay, so what will happen is that we have the approval, but we don't want to sell the bonds before we really have legitimate amount of expense to deplete what we brought in terms of true cash from the bond, because there are federal requirements for how quickly you need to spend that money. They don't want districts, some of these bond issues for districts are literally $1 billion. It's not unheard of now. Well, they could go out and just sell the entire amount and just ride the interest forever. And so the Fed has put the brakes on that, and there are some requirements on how quickly you spend. So we will not actually sell any bonds until March, maybe April at the earliest, and it will not be for the full 131 million. It will be for about 40 million at that time, and then we'll take it from there.
All right, thanks. Any further questions? Not, I have a motion on the. Oh, I can't see anybody's hands tonight.
Early education allotment, we didn't use it last year. Are we getting another allotment for this school year?
Yes, and to our welcome surprise, the allotment was more than we anticipated. Rest assured that the campus that benefits the most is our ball campus, and they're really good at finding ways to spend money responsibly, I will add. And there is a plan in place. It's not all going to ball. I don't want to mislead anyone. But there is an allotment that comes each year, and we're happy to be surprised when TEA settles up. We don't know really what it's gonna be until closer to the end of the year, and at that time, it's just too late to jump in and spend the money. So it's nice that we have the opportunity to carry some forward, and then we'll make sure we spend it this year. But we'll probably continue, as long as early ed allotment is there, I anticipate that you're gonna see that as a line item pretty much every single year. May vary in amount, but it should be there just about every year.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, all right. So I do have a motion. Do I hear a second? Okay, Mr. Guerra. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. All right, and I think you're still up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have to possibly adopt a resolution to delegate authority regarding construction matters.
So this is a customary thing to do. I did run this by our counsel, both our bond counsel as well as our standard legal counsel. I just wanted to be sure that everybody felt good about this and that I could speak to it with real conviction. So this does not take any authority away from the board. And I want to make sure that that's very clear. All this does is allow administration to avoid a board meeting before we go out for bid. We can go out for bid, we can do the things associated with the bid, we can evaluate the bid, and this is all related to the 2022 bond issue construction projects, of which there are many. We're not talking just about the big ones, we're talking about lots of little ones regarding plumbing, regarding HVAC, regarding fencing, regarding roofing. And so for each one of those bids, because they are construction related, by law, we would want to, or would be required to come to the board for permission for certain things before we went out for bid. Then we would go out for bid and we would come back to the board to make our recommendation, and then the board would decide whether they approve the recommendation or not. What this allows is for administration to make the initial decisions that allow us to go out for bid. When we need to go out for bid, we come back with the recommendation after the bid, and along with the recommendation are all the other things that you need to make a decision on that we did on a preliminary basis, but none of it is a decision until you approve it. So we eliminate a board meeting before the bid, and it allows for a much greater efficiency.
Are there any questions? No? Okay. Do I hear a motion for approval to delegate authority regarding construction matters? Mr. Amador would like to make that motion. Do I hear a second? Second from Ms. Duncan. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. And last up, we have discussion and possible action to reorganize and select board officers. Has your name on here, Dr. Gutierrez. But I think actually if we can turn to Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Amador both served on our nominating committee. So, Mr. Jenkins.
I would move to reorganize the board and select officers for
All right. And do you have nominations for those positions?
I do have a nomination for secretary, it would be Ms. Linda Duncan. And I have a nomination for president, Mr. Guerra.
And vice president?
I will retain if y'all have it.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to reorganize with Alejandro Guerra as our president. Mr. Jenkins will stay in as vice president, and Ms. Duncan will become secretary. Is there any discussion? I'd like to say that, you know, I've been talking to y'all about this for a while, so keep that under consideration when you vote. So, no further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign.
I felt weird about it too. So who seconded the motion?
Motion carries. 6-0. All right, one abstention. All right, that is it for our agenda. Are there any comments or requests from the board for our next meeting?
I'm sorry. I do have a request. They briefly mentioned it, the middle schools did, but I'd like to see like on their actual presentations for their Friday attendance. To be in, I mean, they briefly mentioned it, but, which was great, but I'd like to have it like on the presentation. Just for support of that program.
In our communication, can we, each time, can we put our board report link in there?
Oh, so you don't have to go there?
Yes, but I think I might have saved it to my desktop.
We're coming up with a plan to have everything that y'all need in one place.
One Google Drive.
And actually like a Google website that you all only have access to, because it's gonna have everything. And so you'll see live those communiques being built, everything will be there. And something that would be even more user-friendly than using a Google Drive.
Okay, thank you. Sounds interesting. All right. Yes, sir, Mr. Guerra.
I just want to thank Cindy Jimenez for serving as board president for the past 6 years. A lot of positive things have been going on in the district, and Cindy has played a vital role in the process.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm not going to cry. Okay, at that, we will call this, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Cindy, I just
Mr.
didn't,
Amador would like to adjourn. We got a motion from him and a second.
I'm sorry, on the last for the reorganization, I know that Mr. Jenkins made the motion. I didn't hear who made the second.
Oh, Mr. Amador.
Second,
Yeah.
the organization, okay, sorry. I just could not hear.
Okay. I'm going blank at 6:40. I mean, I want to say we're 6 hours in. It's 10:43. Okay, Mr. Amador has asked for an adjournment. Do I hear a second? Mr. Jenkins, all in favor, raise your right hand. And it's 10:43 and this meeting is over. So thank everybody.
So who was the abstention? Yeah, I need those.
That was,
Oh, yeah.